Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto saves Kurenai in Wave Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Kurenai Yohi had had the reputation as the Ice Queen of the Hidden Leaf for almost 20 years now. Regarded as cold, aloof and standoffish to most, she radiated a mystery woman aura to those who did not know her well, or who could not see through the mask she wore that gave her the Ice Queen moniker. In the last 3.5 years, however, she had become much colder and more distant, and what was once a mask had started to become her true personality. Before, even when she wore the mask, one could see the warmth that was her true nature in her eyes if they looked closely enough. Ever since the war, though, the warmth had vanished, leaving eyes that were cold. It hadn't happened right away, but the loss of her lover Asuma, and her miscarriage, combined with the pressures of fighting on the front lines in the Fourth Great Shinobi War, which had by far been the most brutal, devastating and horrific conflict in the elemental nations to date, all of these things together had seemingly broken her heart. Life itself seemed to be fogged over in a grayish haze for Kurenai these days. It was bland. The emotions that she did feel simply weren't that rich, in either a good or a bad way. Sadness was simply a sigh, happiness didn't seem to come, and anger was nothing more than a rolling of the eyes and a focus of her attention onto something else. Her heart simply didn't feel that much except on this day. It was January 4th, the anniversary of Asuma Saratobi's death. Kurenai always found this day to be very hard. Even though it had been 4 years since he had been killed by Haiden of Akatsuki, she still couldn't completely let go or move on. Reminded not only of Asuma, but also of the child that she had miscarried during Pain's attack before Naruto had gotten there to fight him off, this was always the worst day of the year for her, and yet, she couldn't bring herself to do anything except immerse herself in thoughts and memories of her lost love, and grieve over her lost child. In a way, she was grateful for this ritual and day, even though the feelings were largely negative. She was thankful that she could actually feel anything at all, even if it was nothing but grief, hurt and sadness. She was on her way to the cemetery to visit Asuma's gravesite, having just bought a fresh bouquet of flowers from the Yamanaka flower shop. While there, she and Ino didn't say much to each other. Ino understood what significance today held for Kurenai. Ino herself was always a bit melancholy on this day of the year as well. Even though she had been able to mourn properly and move forward, she still missed her old sensei. Kurenai was thankful that Ino had simply offered her a small smile, given her a hug and quickly made the floral arrangement for her to take to Asuma's grave. Ino always gave Kurenai a discount on this day, a small encouragement for which Kurenai was thankful. This year's winter was colder than usual. Even though as a ninja, the cold didn't affect her quite as severely as it would a civilian, she still couldn't help but take notice. She thought that the cold in the air resembled the cold, empty feeling that had been in her heart since her Asuma had been taken from her. As she closed in on the Hidden Leaf Cemetery, she began to feel an even colder breeze. She could also smell it in the air. It was going to rain, yet another appropriate metaphor for the tears she knew she would soon be shedding as she entered the cemetery through the cast iron front gate. As she made her way towards Asuma's tombstone, she began to worry in the back of her mind about her current state of dress. She was wearing her typical bandage-style dress with a single red sleeve and black shinobi sandals, forehead protector, also in black, around her forehead. Even though she was on leave today, she knew that as a jounin of the Hidden Leaf, she could be called in for a mission at any moment should the need arise, so it was always prudent to be prepared when out and about. Not knowing if she'd have the emotional strength to come back to this place if she left now to get some rain gear, she decided that she would simply endure what would undoubtedly be a very cold rain while going through this yearly ritual of remembrance. When she had found Asuma's grave, she laid the bouquet in front of the stone, lowered herself to her knees and sat on her heels, and simply placed her hand on the name engraved in the marble grave marker. She began to shed her own first tears as the first raindrops began to fall. As the rainfall progressed into a steady drizzle, to a thunder shower, and then into a full downpour, Kurenai's own tear flow would match it, first a few tears here and there, into steady shedding of tears, eventually turning into silent, body-racking sobs as she dropped her hands to the ground to support her upper body's weight, hanging her head and clenching her eyes closed. This was always a very hard day for her. 20-year-old Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze had just left the Hokage's office after reporting back in from routine border patrol. 1 month out in the wild had really given him a craving for Ichiraku ramen, and he decided that it was time to indulge that craving. It had started to rain about an hour or so beforehand, the perfect weather in which to enjoy a piping hot bowl of broth and noodly goodness. He found himself thankful that he had put weather-resistant seals into his crimson with black flames sage cloak. In addition, he had also placed seals into the cloak that would warm his body and dry him off if he activated them, each of the seals with their own chakra storage seals so that the cloak could perform this task without him having to concentrate on it. Naruto had to admit that the last several years had been good to him. His 3-year training trip with Jiraiya he would call the best years of his life. His growth as a shinobi, and as a person had been absolutely staggering during this period. Jiraiya had not only helped Naruto with his education and training, but he had also taught him 2 other important lessons: espionage and intelligence gathering, and the importance of having sources of income other than ninja missions, which could always dry up during periods of peace and low activity. Not even Tsunade knew that Jiraiya had shown Naruto how to build his own spy network and develop his own methods of gathering intel. Jiraiya had also taught him how to invest in and build businesses while living the lifestyle of a shinobi. Naruto was now intensely grateful for the investment lessons that he received, as he now owned several highly successful businesses that made him rather wealthy. His gratitude was increased by the fact that since the war ended, ninja were not in as high demand as they were when things were a little more tense between the nations. Missions weren't as plentiful anymore, and even high-level jounin had to take what they could get, which was mostly C ranks with the occasional B rank mission thrown in. A ranks were few and far between, and S ranks were almost unheard of anywhere these days. Naruto, having plenty of money, told Tsunade of his business ventures, letting her know that he didn't need missions to make ends meet, and that the other shinobi should get his share of the missions. This, of course, did not excuse him from his annual shift of border patrol, or from clients asking for him specifically, although this rarely happened as Naruto's services went at a premium. He was one of 2 S-rank ninja in the village at the present time, the other, of course, being Tsunade, and of the 2, Naruto was by far the stronger. It wouldn't be long now before Naruto would be named Hokage, and he was currently being trained by Tsunade for the position, which he would officially receive within a year's time. Naruto found himself reflecting on his relation to the village that was his home over the years. He had started as the village pariah, the child whose existence nobody even wanted to acknowledge. Icy stares and whispers are what he received as a kid. Most times, he would be kicked out of stores, or overcharged for goods, many store owners making it clear that he wasn't welcome in their store. Of course, the pranks that he used to pull didn't exactly help his case, either, but he only turned to mischief because people didn't acknowledge his existence in the first place. He simply created an environment in which he would be impossible to ignore. Things got better once he became a shinobi. It took a while, but people started to look at him differently when they watched his performance in his first Chunin exam. He had begun to earn the respect of his peers and their senseis when he defeated Kiba Inuzuka in the final exam preliminary round. He began to earn the respect of the rest of the village when he defeated Niji Hyuga in the finals. He was respected even more so once word began to spread about his defeat of Gaara in his full Shikaku transformation, and more still when the story was told that it was he who brought Tsunade back to the village to be the 5th Hokage. Respect had turned into hero worship when he had defeated Pain and saved the village. His loved it at first, but it began to get old fairly quickly, particularly when he began to notice certain things. Everyone now wanted to be his new best friend, which of course he didn't mind, being that he could befriend just about anyone anyway. It was when girls and even some women who hadn't even given him the time of day, or had even been cruel to him before all of this, all of a sudden became fangirls of his that he started to see how shallow hero worship was. He was made even more aware of the shallowness of the village as a whole when people who had ignored him, or even kicked him out of their stores or called him cruel names as a kid began to come up to him as though it had never happened, and they would tell him things like, "I always knew you were a great kid." The hero worship and fangirl problem became even worse when he was given a field promotion from Genin straight to elite jounin during the war, and his heritage became public knowledge. When the village learned that Naruto, now considered one of their 2 greatest heroes, was in fact the son of Minato Namikaze, the other of their 2 greatest heroes, they responded with thunderous applause and wild cheering. This continued hero worship had, of course, increased even more after he had destroyed Madara and Sasuke Uchiha, ending the 4th Great Shinobi War and bringing about final victory for the Shinobi Alliance. Even through all of this, the village itself had acted as though they had never done Naruto any wrong in his lifetime. He never received a single apology for any abuse or cruelty that he'd had to endure as a child, and even up to his mid-teenage years while Naruto was very forgiving, it bothered him that the village seemed to be rather averse to taking ownership of and responsibility for its wrongdoings. Even amongst the shinobi that he was close to and worked with in the Leaf, there were very few that truly knew him. Among the civilian populace, the Ikarakas were the only people that did. They had been the only ones who had been able to see through not only Naruto's label as the Demon Boy, but through the mask he used to wear to keep himself shielded from the pain that he felt as a child from the isolation that was forced upon him. They had been the one constant throughout the years. He knew that he could always count on the 2 of them if he needed a place to go, even just to take the mask off for a while. If he was grateful for anyone in his life, it was definitely Old Man Tucci and his big sister figure Ayam. Among his comrades, Shikamaru was probably the only person in his age group that truly knew Naruto well, and that was only because he was able to make very astute observations that others missed. Of course, When he confronted Naruto about this, Naruto freely opened up and admitted to him that the only reason that he never shared real things about himself before was because, with the exception of Konohamaru and Irika, and by extension Hanabi and Enko, nobody ever asked. The Ikarakas, of course, didn't have to ask, as he never hid anything from them anyway. He had simply accepted the fact that people simply weren't interested in getting to know him. They thought they already had him figured out. Whether he was the demon boy or the village hero, people had an idea of him, and in all the years his peers knew him, none of them had bothered to try to find out who he really was, and that's what irked him most of all. This truly was a shallow village he lived in, but it was his home, and he loved it all the same. He would protect it until his dying breath. This line of thinking helped him to turn his thoughts to those people that made the village his home more than anyone else. Konohamaru, of course, knew Naruto as well as Shikamaru did, because he had actually taken an interest in his surrogate big brother's life. Konohamaru had been dating Hanabi Hyuga for a little while now, and Hayashi, seeing a way to get Hanabi out of having to brand her with the caged bird seal, spoke with the two of them, letting them know his thoughts and, with the approval of both Konohamaru and Hanabi, setting up an official betrothal contract for the two. They were to be married by April of next year. This, of course, caused Naruto to get to know Hanabi a lot better, as they were with him at his house quite a bit, and Hanabi came to see Naruto as a big brother herself. Irika, of course, always took an interest in his surrogate little brother's life, and when Irika had started seeing Enko Mitarashi, she began to get to know a completely different Naruto than she had previously thought him to be. She became a big sister figure to him as well, also spending a lot of time in each other's homes, as Naruto had them over quite a bit, and once they were married and they had bought their own house, they had Naruto over quite a bit as well. Naruto couldn't help but think back to Irika's and Enko's wedding. Naruto was the best man, and Kurenai Yuhi was the maid of honor. Naruto was all smiles that day for one of his most cherished loved ones, but he remembered that Kurenai's smile seemed to be rather forced, as though she were genuinely happy for Enko, but was remembering something that was quite painful for her. They had both made some small talk during the wedding reception, and he could tell that the woman was grateful that he was doing what he could to take her mind off of whatever it was that was bothering her. He made an educated guess that she was thinking of what her life would be like had Asuma lived and they had married, but he wisely decided not to broach the topic with her. As he walked by the cemetery on his way to his favorite eating establishment in town, he was broken out of his musings when he overheard a few men talking amongst themselves. "Boy, I wouldn't mind getting me a piece of that," said the first one with a leer. "Yes, she's a hottie. All right, I'd like to bang that myself," said a second one, with a smirk to the first one. Said a third, drooling at the object of their perverted thoughts. Naruto stopped for a moment, and cast a glance in the direction that the men were looking, and saw the back of a woman. He recognized the bandaged dress and black-brown hair of the woman who had just taken center stage in his musings, one Kurenai Yuhi, kneeling in front of a gravestone with her head hung down and shoulders slumped, shivering, her body shaking up and down every now and again in what appeared to be sobs. Even from here, Naruto could tell that she was soaked to the bone, and would likely end up getting sick if she didn't cover up or take shelter soon. He hadn't really seen Kurenai in a while, or interacted with her much, but seeing her in the state that he presumed she was in, he felt compelled to try to offer some form of assistance to her. Noting his own compulsion, Naruto found himself getting irritated that these men were simply leering at her, not even noticing her emotional distress or physical discomfort, and began to walk in the direction of the cemetery's front gate, which happened to be where these men were standing. As Naruto approached, the men noticed him, smiled and greeted him like he was their best friend, as had become commonplace in Naruto's experience. Naruto simply smiled and nodded curtly, not stopping to talk to them, and entered the cemetery, not noticing that the men had decided to move on when he left. His expression changed to one of concern as he walked over to Kurenai, who was indeed shivering and sobbing, seemingly lost in her own world. Naruto removed his cloak and draped it over her shoulders as he walked around to the front of her. Kurenai opened her eyes as she felt the cloak drape over her body. She slowly looked up, her eyes taking in a pair of brown low-top leather lace-up boots and bleached blue loose-fit jeans, coming up to a crimson long-sleeve pullover shirt under a black jounin vest, and finally resting upon a mop of spiky blonde hair, and sparkling blue eyes on a tanned, chiseled face adorned with 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. Recognizing Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, she blinked a couple of times as those beautiful cerulean blues looked at her with great concern, seemingly wishing that they could ease her pain, or even take it away completely. As he saw her swollen, puffy cheeks and ruby-red eyes made crimson from being bloodshot with tears, he offered a sad smile, which for some reason caused her to begin crying even harder than she had been, but this time, the sobs were loud, she couldn't hold them back anymore. Kurenai leaned forward, sobbing loudly into Naruto's shirt, her arms grasping at his jounin vest. She eased into him even more as Naruto's arms simply wrapped around her, his right hand gently holding the back of her head through her hair, his left hand gently rubbing up and down her back as she cried into him, releasing everything she was feeling. After a few moments, she eased into him even further, wrapping her arms around his body, clinging to him, continuing to sob into his chest, Naruto continuing to rub her back and keeping his hand in her hair. While doing this, he made shushing noises to calm her, and spoke softly, reassuring her that he would remain with her for as long as it took to let all of her grief out. After a few minutes of this, by the time Kurenai had cried herself out, she pulled back from him, regaining her composure before looking up at him and giving him a grateful smile. "Thank you, Naruto," she said quietly, her voice somewhat hoarse from sobbing. "You're quite welcome," he responded with a warm smile of his own. She smiled at his thoughtfulness, causing him to respond, "Kurenai, do you want me to give you some space for a while?" At this, Kurenai took a moment to collect her thoughts enough to respond to him as she said, Thank you," again with a grateful smile. Naruto released his hold on her, Kurenai doing the same. He said to her, "The cloak is weather resistant, and it has seals in it that will warm you up and dry you off," before putting his right hand into a half-ram sign, touching the cloak with his left hand and whispering, "Dry heat seal, release." Kurenai noticed that she immediately became warmer, and was also beginning to dry off, even the parts of her that were not covered in the cloak. She looked at Naruto, again with gratitude, and a bit of wonder mixed in. Naruto began to walk away while saying, "Take as much time as you want, okay? I'll wait for you by the front entrance." As he left her to finish her visitation, she found that she felt strangely lighter than she had felt in quite a while. She had never grieved or wailed that loudly, even when she had learned of Asuma's death or upon learning that she had miscarried, and she found that it had felt great to get it all out of her system. Years of pent-up grief and anguish had been released into Naruto's warm, comforting embrace, and she couldn't help but wonder how it was that this hadn't happened until now. She spent a few more minutes at Asuma's gravesite, privately thanking Asuma for sending Naruto her way. She had somehow imagined that it was Asuma who sent Naruto to try to comfort her, and then got up, heading towards the front entrance. She saw Naruto standing there, simply waiting patiently, allowing himself to get soaked in the downpour as she was now warm and dry in his sage cloak. He smiled as he saw her walking towards him, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at this young, handsome, and now rather tall, man before her. She began to think back to the last time she had seen him, which was at Enko's and Irika's wedding. She could tell that he had noticed how she was feeling at that time, and at the wedding reception, he had seemingly made it his personal mission to make sure that it would be a fun and happy affair for her as well as for the bride and groom. It meant a lot to her that he was so considerate at that time. He was at least a good 6 to 7 inches taller. He had to be at least 6 feet 3 inches to her 5 feet 9 inches. His hair was in the same style as his father's, spiky blonde up top, extending down to the bottom of his neck. As his face had matured, he resembled his father more and more. In fact, many had thought that he was the spitting image of his father, taking away the whisker marks. It was also easy to see that he had matured mentally and emotionally in the past 4 or so years since coming back from his training trip with Jiraiya. His voice sounded close to his father's as she remembered it, but Naruto's timbre was slightly lower. She also noticed a spark of wisdom and intelligence in his piercing gaze, along with sadness and pain, indicating that he had matured beyond his years, and that his maturation had not been easy. As she pondered this, she realized that in all the time she had known him, that she really didn't know him. All she knew were what the public already knew, as well as what the rumor mill spread. Naruto brought her out of her reverie as he asked, "All set?" Kurenai smiled and nodded, responding, "Yes, thank you for loaning me your cloak, Naruto," as she began to remove it to return to him. Naruto walked up to her and placed his hands over her own, gently pulling the cloak closed once again on her slim, lithe form. She looked up at him in confusion, to which he responded with a smile, "Kurenai, I will not allow a lady to be soaked in the rain, or made to be uncomfortable if it's within my power to prevent it." At this, her confused frown became a surprised smile as she simply responded with a light blush, "Well, thank you, Naruto." "Not at all," responded Naruto with a warm chuckle. He continued, "So where can I escort you to?" As they walked out of the cemetery and began to follow the road, Naruto walking alongside Kurenai, letting her dictate their direction. "Well, I was just going to head back home," Kurenai admitted. "Please lead the way," said Naruto graciously. As they were walking, Kurenai's face began to pull itself into a happy smile. She began to talk to Naruto. "So where are you coming from, Naruto?" "I just left from reporting in to Grandma Tsunade after returning from border patrol." Kurenai frowned in distaste at this. "You must be glad to be back." "Yeah, I really am," replied Naruto, agreement with her own distaste for the drab assignment evident in his own tone. "But I don't have to go again for a whole year, so that's kinda nice. What about you? Any interesting missions yourself lately?" No, not really, just typical run-of-the-mill assignments, like escort duty, bandit elimination, things like that. Most of my duties lately have actually consisted of training and researching new genjutsu. Naruto's interest seemed to peak at this. Really? Have you come up with anything yet? Kurenai shrugged. Nothing really, yet, but I think I may be on track to using a modified version of the second Hokage's infinite darkness jutsu, she finished with a little excitement. Ever since the miscarriage, she had thrown herself into her work, which was now her primary source of stimulation and fulfillment, if it could be called that. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Really? Why modified? Well, I've found that my chakra reserves and control are at about their peaks in balance right now. The problem is that I can't seem to increase my control any more than I have, and when I try to increase my reserves, my control starts to suffer, and I currently don't have enough chakra to effectively perform the original jutsu, hence the need to modify. Naruto looked down at the road in front of him as he hummed in thought, then turned to Kurenai, not slowing his leisurely gait. That's a rather interesting problem to have. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone running into that particular issue. In theory, there should be no plateau like that. What chakra exercises have you been using to increase your control and reserves? Kurenai responded, the standard ones: leaf balancing, tree and water walking, kunai and saban balancing. Any combination thereof, those are really the only ones that I know, and they're also the only ones I've needed for fine-tuned control. Naruto continued to ponder the issue that he had heard. He seemed to know something about her problem, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He knew it would come to him in time, so he decided to tell Kurenai that he would look into her issue. Kurenai, Naruto began as Kurenai turned her gaze to him once more. Something about the issue you're facing doesn't seem well normal, to be honest. Let me do a little research on what might cause this kind of problem, and I'll see if I can help you find a better solution than having to modify jutsu to suit that limitation, okay? Kurenai's eyes brightened as she nodded, intrigued and excited at the possibility of making a breakthrough in her overall level of ability and skill. Silence reigned for a few moments, becoming somewhat uncomfortable, at least for Kurenai. She decided to break the silence. You know, Naruto, I can't help but think about Enko and Irika's wedding, and how well you were quite observant of my mental and emotional state that day. I never did tell you just how thankful I was that you helped me just to enjoy myself that day. Upon hearing this, Naruto smiled and responded in a tone belying genuine curiosity. You're welcome, but what brings that to mind? Actually, the fact that you've done it yet again just now, responded Kurenai, as she lowered her head, feeling both thankful towards Naruto, but at the same time, hurt and angry that nobody else had done anything beforehand. I had been at Asuma's gravesite for over an hour when you showed up, and nobody cared enough to try to help me. I overheard the comments of those men when they were ogling me. But you came over and seemed to know exactly what it was I needed. I guess seeing this and experiencing this from you, it makes me realize that I really don't know you as well as I might have thought I did. And you're right. I don't really know you that well either. What do you say we remedy that? Almost immediately, Kurenai's stomach began to growl, causing her to blush. Naruto, not missing a beat, raised an eyebrow and added with a chuckle, over lunch, maybe? Kurenai gave a small smile and mild embarrassment, nodding in agreement with Naruto's suggestion. Naruto asked, so got a tasting for anything? Kurenai thought a little before responding, not really, but I wouldn't mind some hot soup, this is good weather for it. Naruto responded in turn, I like the way you think, how does ramen sound? Kurenai gave another small smile and nodded. Naruto responded, to Ichiraku's then. After a few moments of walking, they arrived at their destination, and entered through the front flaps, immediately attacked by the heavenly smell that the little stand always emitted. I am Ichiraku turned around and saw the stand's #1 customer, greeting him warmly, welcome back, Naruto. It's been too quiet without you here. Hey there, I am, said Naruto, giving her his famous foxy grin, how are ya? Same old, same old. 1sec, she responded, as she turned around and yelled towards the back of the stand, Dad, Naruto's back. Tsuchi Ichiraku came back out of the stockroom, grinning upon seeing his favorite customer. Hey, Naruto. It's great to see you again, son. And with company, no less, he added with an amused, playful smile. You too, Tsuchi, and yes, I believe you know Kurenai Yuhi. Why, yes, I do. What can I get for the two of you? Naruto looked at Kurenai with raised eyebrows, allowing her to order first. Kurenai looked at Naruto, seeing his expression, and turned back to Tsuchi to place her order. I'll have a large seafood ramen, extra shrimp and fish cakes, please. Naruto then placed his own order. I'll have a Naruto special to start, old man. Tsuchi smiled knowingly, coming up. Kurenai looked at Naruto with a single raised questioning eyebrow. A Naruto special? Naruto grinned somewhat sheepishly as he responded, yeah, extra large bowl of miso ramen with 2 boiled eggs, double barbecued pork, fish cakes, beef, chicken, sprouts and a lobster claw. I order it so much that we just made a name for it. He added with a chuckle, I personally think Tucci should just add it as a menu item, but he has yet to take that leap. Kurenai giggled in response to this, giving a slightly larger half-smile. Fair enough, maybe we can create a Kurenai special, today, She finished with a warm laugh. Naruto brought his hand to his chin in an exaggeratedly thoughtful gesture, with an equally exaggeratedly thoughtful frown. And what would be in the Kurenai special? Naruto turns to Kurenai, hands in front of him, palms facing outward and down, gesturing to imaginary ingredients on the counter as he begins his lecture on how to construct a special ramen dish. Okay, we have to start with a base, at which Kurenai began to engage in some interplay, responding, okay, so you mean we start with a broth or stock? Naruto smiled as he began some interplay of his own, correct. The Naruto special, for example, has a base of miso and beef broth. So what would the Kurenai special's base be? Responded Kurenai, as she looked off in an exaggeratedly thoughtful expression of her own, and responding after a few moments, I believe that a shrimp, lobster or even a vegetable base would best suit the Kurenai special. At this, Naruto took on a genuinely thoughtful expression, as though trying to envision how a mix of these might taste, I wonder what about a mix of shrimp and vegetable stock? Kurenai wore a bemused smirk as she responded, that actually sounds pretty good. Naruto, still in thought, added, I must admit I also find myself wondering what shrimp broth and miso might taste like together. Both of their musings were interrupted by the soft clink of a small platter being placed on the counter by none other than Tucci. On the platter were 6 small sample-sized cups of broth, separated into pairs, which caused Naruto and Kurenai to both raise an eyebrow in confusion at the ramen chef. Tucci answered the unspoken question with a smirk. Well, since you're both wondering how certain combinations might taste mixed together, I thought I'd let you actually taste them. He pointed to each pair of sample cups as he identified them, shrimp and miso, shrimp and vegetable, and for laughs, shrimp, vegetable and miso. He looked back up at them, so taste each and let me know what you think. Naruto and Kurenai both picked up their respective cups of shrimp and miso first. Naruto knocked it back, swishing it around in his mouth to get a good feel for the flavor before swallowing. Kurenai sipped hers a little more slowly, smacking her tongue against her palate in order to help her concentrate on the flavor. Both Kurenai and Naruto nodded in approval at the combination, and they tasted the other 2 samples in the same method. When they were done, Kurenai spoke her mind. I believe that the shrimp and vegetable base would best suit the Kurenai special, as the miso, while very good, overpowers the other 2. I envision the Kurenai special with a lighter flavor. At this, Naruto and Tucci nodded in approval of her judgment. Naruto continued with the lesson, excellent. Okay, we have the base, and of course, the noodles go without saying, but how about the toppings? Kurenai answered without missing a beat, shrimp, lots and lots of shrimp. And then fish cake, scallops, crab legs, a lobster claw, some bean sprouts, and a bay leaf as a garnish. Naruto raised a curious eyebrow. Kurenai continued after catching her breath, looking at Naruto dead in the eye while wagging a finger in emphasis, and presentation of the dish is very important in the Kurenai special. The dish must be a work of art, perfectly symmetrical. The lobster claw should stand against the left side of the bowl, and the crab legs should line the remaining edge. The bottoms of the crab legs should be surrounded by the shrimp in a wraparound fashion. The fish cakes and bean sprouts should be in the middle of the bowl, and the scallops. Kurenai raised her finger to her chin and glanced upward in thought, finishing with, the scallops should be underneath the noodles as a sort of pleasant surprise, so to speak, and the bay leaf should be dead center of the bowl. Kurenai smiled and nodded in satisfaction as she finished, not having noticed that Tucci had gone back into the kitchen to start on the orders. Naruto nodded back, turned his head towards the kitchen and shouted, Hey Tucci! Did you get all that? Let's have a Kurenai special in place of Kurenai's previous order. I got it all, son! 2 Kurenai specials coming right up. Kurenai's eyes went wide with surprise as Naruto gave her a wink and a thumbs up. She wasn't actually going to order the dish, she was only having a little spontaneous fun with her present companion, but the more she thought about it, the more appetizing her creation seemed to become. She smiled in pleasant surprise at this realization, but then she realized what Tucci had said. She turned to Naruto with yet another raised eyebrow, too? Naruto explained, well, if it's a new dish, I have to try it, too. Kind of an unspoken rule at Ichiraku's. Naruto must try all new dishes. Kurenai laughed at this and responded, then, of course, we must follow the house rules. Naruto laughed with her as he continued, and then, of course, we'll have to think of a Naruto and Kurenai special. At which both of them cracked up. Tucci interrupted them as he brought their orders, one Kurenai special for Kurenai, and a Kurenai special and a Naruto special for Naruto. He gave both of his current patrons an amused smirk. Well, you two, before you go off the deep end in creating additional menu selections for me, why don't you go ahead and enjoy what you ordered? Both Naruto and Kurenai grinned rather sheepishly at this. Naruto found Kurenai's face to be quite adorable with a sheepish expression on it. Kurenai noticed his thoughtfully amused smirk and asked, "What is it?" Naruto responded, "I don't think I've ever seen you wear a sheepish expression before." Kurenai seemed to think about this, and responded, "I guess we're both a little surprised today because I've never engaged in such witty banter with you before." Naruto nodded at this, very true, but for now, as he turned to his bowl of ramen and broke his chopsticks, saying, "Down the hatch." As he began to eat his ramen, Kurenai doing the same. Kurenai, of course, knew of Naruto's ramen fetish, but had heard from several of her friends and her former students that he would usually inhale his ramen and that it was quite a sight to see. To see him eating his food with perfect table manners was another surprise. She raised an eyebrow at this, and Naruto seemed to know what she was thinking, as his response would indicate. "If you're wondering why I'm not wolfing it down, it's because it would be unfitting and impolite to do so in the presence of a lady," he finished with a smile. Kurenai smiled at Naruto's indirect compliment. As the pair ate their meal, they began to make conversation. Naruto started, "So Kurenai, tell me a little bit about yourself." Kurenai responded, "Okay, what would you like to know?" I guess we can start with the basics. Likes, dislikes, hobbies, interests, dreams, stuff like that." Genin team style introductions, huh? Okay then, well, as you know, I'm a genjutsu mistress. I like learning about and training in new types of genjutsu. I also like roses, shochu, vodka and octopus with wasabi, spending time with friends, being pampered and treated like a lady. She nodded at Naruto while she said this, letting him know that she acknowledged his gentlemanly treatment of her on this day, curling up with a good book in front of a warm fire, relaxing in spas and hot springs, fine dining, and flowery and spicy scents. I dislike cake, perverts, barbaric men and people who make hasty judgments or conclusions without first gathering all the facts. Naruto smiled at this as Kurenai continued, "My hobbies are having evening drinks with friends, reading good romance and mystery novels, and cooking." Naruto's expression molded itself into an intrigued smirk with a single raised eyebrow as he heard this, but he didn't interrupt her as she continued. "My interests include genjutsu training and research, learning new and interesting ways to cook, and learning about shokus and vodkas of various kinds and flavors. My dream is to be the world's most renowned genjutsu mistress, and I would say that my immediate goal for the time being, which you have just given to me, is to try to overcome the plateau that I've found myself on concerning the balance between my chakra control and reserves." She took a breath as she finished, then asked, "So what about you, Naruto?" "Well, I like music." At this, Kurenai found herself rather shocked, raising both eyebrows and looking intently at him while he continued, "Various types of food, including but not limited to ramen, sushi, any kind of meat that's grilled, roasted or stewed, and even dango. My favorite ninja art is Fuinjutsu." Kurenai found herself surprised yet again. "I also like taijutsu, kenjutsu and ninjutsu. I love to learn anything new, especially any new skills that I can get my hands on. My favorite jutsu to use is my shadow clone jutsu because of the way in which I learn anything my clones learn, which allows me to learn and master any new skills I wish to learn very quickly. I like shogi, go and any other game of strategy. I love physical training. I also like relaxing in a good hot spring. My dislikes are perverts, fangirls," at which he involuntarily shuddered before continuing, "people who make hasty judgments about others, being hit by people simply because they're annoyed, cowards and traitors." Kurenai noticed Naruto's eyes darkened just a bit as he said the last two, but allowed him to continue. "My hobbies are learning any new skills that I might find useful and putting them to use, training my mind and body. Calligraphy, it helps with my ceiling, singing and playing various musical instruments." At this, Kurenai couldn't help but interrupt. "Really?" she said, surprise evident in both her tone and expression. Naruto smiled. "It's true. I was actually born with perfect pitch, and I had taken up singing to start with as a kid. I didn't start to learn how to play instruments until a couple of years ago, though." Kurenai smiled, both intrigued and excited about this new discovery she had just been given as she responded, "You'll have to sing for me, sometime, then." Naruto gave an embarrassed chuckle. "We'll see," he responded before continuing, "Now, where was I? Ah, yes. Some of the skills I've picked up are gardening, architecture, carpentry and construction." Kurenai's eyes grew wider and wider as he continued listing off several of his hobbies: cooking, interior design, basic tailoring, and blacksmithing. "My interests are researching and developing new skills for my Fuinjutsu, learning various fighting styles to add to my own, whether kenjutsu or taijutsu, finding new and more effective ways to break or counter genjutsu, which is actually something of a little project that I'm working on, one that I wouldn't mind your help with. Now that I think about it, Kurenai nodded in understanding as he continued. And learning the various political, economic, and social aspects and goings-on within the village. And the land of fire. My dreams. Naruto paused to close his eyes and sigh, and then continued in a more subdued tone of voice. My dreams are to be the world's greatest seal master, to be Hokage, so that I can help build a better world than we currently live in, and to hopefully find that special someone and start a family with her, he finished with a smile. Kurenai couldn't help but smile wistfully as she listened. They had each finished their respective meals during the course of the conversation, continuing to make small talk. Kurenai eventually posed the question, so what instruments do you play? Naruto answered, I can play any type of guitar, any piano or keyboard, drums and most percussion instruments, the flute, the pan flute, tenor and alto saxophone, harmonica, the violin, the trumpet, horn, and trombone. Those are the ones I've mastered so far. Kurenai was once again astounded. Those are the instruments you've mastered? Naruto simply smiled and nodded. What I like to do is use shadow clones as my own band while I sing songs that I like. And what kinds of songs do you like? I like to play most types of rock and jazz. I also like some folk and classical type, easy listening. Kurenai smiled once more. Okay, you have got to perform for me at some point. Fair enough, replied Naruto, still unsure as to whether or not he wanted to do this for her or not. He had never actually sang or played for anyone in the village before. The rain had since stopped, and the sun was shining brightly in the early afternoon. Teuchi brought a check each for Kurenai and Naruto. Before Kurenai could take hers, Naruto spoke up. Teuchi, I'll take both of those. Kurenai tried to object. Naruto, you really don't have to. Naruto, however, would have none of it. Nonsense. Being a gentleman, I am more than happy to pay for the lady in my company, he ended with a sincere smile. Kurenai simply smiled in resignation. Very well, thank you, kind sir. You're quite welcome, dear lady, responded Naruto, in a playful tone. Naruto paid both bills, and escorted Kurenai out of the stand. Noting that the rain had stopped, and the sun was out, warming the chill in the air somewhat, Kurenai removed Naruto's cloak from her shoulders and handed it back to him, thanking him again for covering her up. So when should we meet and talk about this little project of yours? Asked Kurenai. Naruto thought at this for a few moments before answering, Are you free later today? Kurenai nodded, mildly surprised that he was prepared to do it so soon. Yes, I am, actually. Naruto continued, Do you still live at the same place? I haven't moved in over 10 years, if that's what you mean. Okay. I know where you live then. I'll come by your place at around 4, okay? You don't have to do that, Naruto. I can just meet you at a training ground or the library or something. That's not the problem. The issue is that all of my research is in my library at home, and it's not exactly portable, and if nothing else, I can make us dinner after we're done. Naruto, you don't have to go to all that trouble, said Kurenai in mock annoyance. Naruto smiled knowingly and simply nodded, replying, It's no trouble, Kurenai. Remember, I like to cook just like you do. Kurenai began to open her mouth to respond, and then curtly closed it, nodding with a smile. Okay then. I'll see you at 4. You bet. Until then, dear lady, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, kind sir. I will be sure to, she said with an exaggerated yet genuine smile as she walked away, waving goodbye. Naruto noticed that her step had quite a bit more spring to it before he left to prepare his notes, so that he could show Kurenai exactly what he had come up with so far. As he was walking home, he continued to ponder her chakra control/reserve balance problem, and the answer suddenly hit him. Smiling to himself, he would be sure to ask Kurenai a few questions about it later to confirm his theory after he brought her to his home. As Kurenai walked home, she unconsciously wore a wistful smile on her face as she strolled at a leisurely pace. She couldn't help but reflect on her encounter with the young blonde who had completely transformed her mood in such a short amount of time. Wow, I don't know what to make of this. Naruto was able to get me to completely drop my guard with just a look and a smile. Even Asuma couldn't do that. Whenever he looked at me, he looked me in the eyes. It's been a while since a man actually treated me like a person with feelings. I'm supposed to be more observant to subtleties than most, so how did I miss all of this about Naruto? A lot of things really kind of make sense, now that I think about it. His fights against Kiba and Niji in the Chunin exams all those years ago, the way he was able to help Yakumo, and the way he believed in me as teammate sensei. Even the way he was able to defeat Pain. In spite of being the ninja that all of us kind of looked down our noses at, he still somehow managed to become far stronger than all of us, and it never occurred to me to try to get to know him before now. Kurenai found herself feeling a sense of resolve that she hadn't felt since the days of her old genin team when she was determined to make them into the best ninja they could be. As her thoughts began to take a different direction. Well, I'm going to get to know the man that has thoroughly intrigued me today. I wonder just how many of his comrades have really taken the time to get to know the real Naruto. She continued strolling along, the dreamy, wistful smile never having left her face, her body walking on autopilot as she daydreamed like a schoolgirl about future encounters and conversations with the Namake's clan head. She was brought out of her daydreaming by a familiar feminine voice to her left calling her name. As she stopped and blinked to collect her thoughts and her bearings, she turned her head in the direction of the voice to see Ino standing in the door of the Yamanaka flower shop. She hadn't even realized that she had walked in this direction. She smiled again as Ino walked towards her. When Ino got close, she stopped and asked with some concern, "So, did everything go okay?" Kurenai nodded with a genuine smile. "Yes, Ino, everything went fine. Thanks again for the discount on the flowers." Ino smiled in response. "It's no problem at all. I miss him, too." Kurenai's smile became a little sadder, but it never left her face. "Yeah, but that's over for now, so let's enjoy the rest of the day, shall we?" she asked, with a brighter smile as she finished. Ino frowned in thought, raising an eyebrow in bemusement, which was evident in her tone. "Kurenai, you do seem a little happier than usual," she said, leaving an open door, hoping to bait Kurenai into sharing why she seemed to be acting a bit out of character at the moment. Kurenai, still feeling rather wistful, didn't seem to notice this, and began to take the bait. She said, looking up and around with that same wistful smile and glazed over look in her eyes. "I guess you're right, I do feel happier than I've felt in a while," as she turned her gaze back to Ino. Ino narrowed her eyes suspiciously at Kurenai, causing her to raise a confused eyebrow. Ino grabbed Kurenai's wrist and pulled her into the shop, towards the back. When she had dragged Kurenai back far enough to be able to have a private conversation, she let go of Kurenai's wrist, turned to face her, and with narrowed eyes and a sly grin on her face, she said, "Okay, spill." "Huh?" asked Kurenai, genuinely confused. Ino continued, "Who is he?" This only seemed to confuse Kurenai even more. Who is who? Ino, of course, would not be deterred. Rolling her eyes, she responded, "Kurenai, you came into the shop earlier sad and depressed, the same way that you come in every year on this day. I find you only a few hours later, and you look like you're walking on air, so if I didn't know any better and I would assume that you've become rather infatuated with someone between then and now. So spill." Ino finished in a mock forceful tone with a raised eyebrow and a bemused smile. Kurenai frowned in thought at this, trying to collect her thoughts. Am I really that easy to read right now? I'm certainly intrigued by Naruto, but would I go so far as to say I'm becoming infatuated with him? I know that I could certainly do worse, but still I haven't even had time to think about my feelings. They've just started. I don't really know how I feel right now, and with this, she turned her attention back to Ino's intense gaze. I'll need to handle this delicately. Kurenai turned to Ino with a smile and responded, "Ino, I won't tell you who he is," and which Ino interrupted, while pointing at Kurenai with a knowing grin. I was right." Kurenai nodded as she continued, "I don't even know how I feel yet because I don't really know him that well. I haven't had the chance to really even think about my feelings because I only started feeling this way a few minutes ago, but if anything does develop, I will make sure to let you know. Does that sound good?" Ino gave a knowing grin, nodding at the older jounin. Kurenai smiled at Ino before taking her leave of the girl, letting her know that she had some things that she needed to take care of. Ino couldn't stop grinning excitedly about the possibility of Kurenai getting a new man, and her curiosity was growing by the second. Of course, working in INT taught her many things, first and foremost among them being patience. She knew she would find out, or dig it out, soon enough. It was a little after 2 in the afternoon when Kurenai arrived at her home. She spent the rest of the afternoon freshening up after having gotten doused in the rain earlier. Even though she was dry, her hair was still a bit of a mess, and she had also found that some of her makeup had run. Feeling rather embarrassed at her current appearance, and rather grateful that Naruto had the presence of mind to not draw any attention to it, she decided to draw a bath and wash up. As she was bathing herself, paying close attention to her hair, she began to hum a happy tune to herself, smiling wistfully once more as she looked forward to when Naruto would come and get her. She started to realize that she was actually getting excited at the fact that she would be eating dinner with him at his home, no less. It was a little before 3 o'clock by the time Kurenai had finished cleaning herself up and getting dressed again. After taking a few minutes to reapply her normal makeup, she decided to read Murder in the Hidden Mist, in order to get her mind off of her excitement at her upcoming appointment with Naruto. She walked into her living room, curled up onto her plush purple velvet love seat, opened her novel to the bookmarked page, and began to read. Naruto was leaping across the rooftops so that he could quickly get back to his home in order to prepare his research for his brainstorming session with Kurenai. As he arrived at his home, he quickly opened the front gate and entered the grounds of his estate. Entering the main house, he quickly made his way to the stairs descending into the first-level basement, more specifically, his lab/workshop, as he had dubbed it. This room was, in reality, a room that branched off from his main library, which was quite extensive. The workroom itself was actually a decent-sized room, with a sizable desk, 2 long tables that he used as workbenches, all of which were a few feet away from the walls, as each of the 4 walls in the room had 2 8-foot by 20-foot whiteboards mounted on it, the room's single door in the middle of 2 of the whiteboards being the only feature distinguishing that wall from the other 3. The whiteboards, fortunately, didn't need too much organizing, as Naruto kept the details on them in good topical or sequential order. The scrolls and other documents containing the rest of his notes, however, needed to be not only organized, but separated from the documents and scrolls that were being used for several other projects of his as well. He created 5 shadow clones, and with them, he started sifting through all of the documentation and paper, separating each document into piles by project. Once he had all of his papers organized, the clones took the other scrolls and placed them out of the way underneath the workbenches, while Naruto himself brought the project he wanted to discuss with Kurenai over to his desk. Satisfied with the simple preparations that he had made, he went back into the main living areas of the house, making his way to the 2nd floor and into his bedroom. Once inside his room, he took off his sage cloak and his jounin vest, but elected to keep his headband on. As he looked at his alarm clock, he realized that the time was now 3:45. He quickly ran out of his room, back down to the 1st floor of the house, and ran out the front door. His front gate was still up, and Naruto unconsciously went through the hand seal sequence that would reseal his property as he exited the grounds and made his way across the rooftops once more, this time to Kurenai's apartment complex. He heard the occasional squeal of a fangirl in the streets below. Shuddering, he decided that they were going to take the rooftops back to his house as well to avoid being mobbed mid-trip. It only took Naruto about 5 minutes to arrive at Kurenai's front door. Even though he was still almost 10 minutes early, he decided to knock anyway. He heard a muffled cry of, "Just a second," from the other side of the door, in a voice that he recognized as Kurenai's own. A few seconds later, the front door opened, revealing a Kurenai that was much more refreshed than when Naruto had last seen her. Naruto smiled as he greeted her. "Hey there." "Hello," Kurenai greeted him in kind as she smiled in response, drawing out the 2nd syllable in a friendly manner. Naruto continued, "I know I'm a little early, do you need a few minutes?" Kurenai shook her head, "Not at all, and you get points in my book for being so prompt. I was just reading a book while waiting for you." "Well, okay then," Naruto said as he stepped back, extending his left arm out to the side in a gesture indicating that he would like her to follow him. "Shall we?" Kurenai smiled in response. "Let's," she said, as she exited her apartment, closing and locking the front door before walking beside Naruto as they left her apartment complex, Naruto leading her in the direction of his home. Naruto set a comfortable rooftop pace for Kurenai to follow him. Kurenai had never realized just how bad Naruto's fangirl problem was until she heard the squeals in the streets below. Even Sasuke didn't have it this bad. In fact, the only person I can remember having this kind of problem was the 4th Hokage. Well, Naruto is his son, so I guess on one hand, it's really not surprising, but still seeing it from this end, she gave an involuntary shudder in sympathy for Naruto as that thought trailed off. After about 10 minutes of travel, Kurenai had followed Naruto to what was the old Uchiha district before the village reclaimed the land and began to sell it off. He led her to a 20-foot-high wall. A single vaulted archway housed a black slab of cast iron that appeared to serve as the front gate. Kurenai watched as Naruto placed his hand on the red Uzumaki spiral that was surrounded in yellowish-orange flames in the exact center of the metal slab and channeled chakra into it. Naruto removed his hand as the emblem began to glow, after which a metallic groan was heard as the slab began to lift itself, allowing the pair entrance to the property within. Kurenai followed Naruto as he entered the grounds. The first thing she noticed was the sudden increase in temperature upon entering the gate. The temperature had gone from a wintry cold to what one would associate to the mild cool of mid-spring. It wasn't hot, but it was definitely quite comfortable, almost the perfect weather in which to train. She glanced back as her ears caught the whining of the gate as it lowered, ending with a loud thud as it touched down. Bringing her gaze back to the front, she began to drink in some of the details of Naruto's property. The inside of the property walls were the first thing she noticed, solid brick and mortar, but what really caught her attention were the seals that were painted all over them, the purposes of which she could only begin to guess. The courtyard itself was well landscaped with a 12-foot-wide marble walkway leading towards the porch at the front of the main house, situated some 30 yards back from the gate. On either side of the walkway was one half of a well-manicured lawn with various shrubs, standalone trees and flower beds scattered sparsely throughout, though patterned in such a way as to make both sides of the front lawns symmetrical. The house itself was quite impressive to look at, built in a Western style of wood painted white intermixed with grayish-brown stone. Kurenai guessed that this two-story mansion had to be at least 5,000 square feet, and this was just from what she could see above ground. As Naruto led her to the front door, he opened it for her as he said, "Welcome to my home, Kurenai." Kurenai smiled as she entered the open doorway. As she entered the house, her eyes started to gaze this way and that, drinking in the details of the foyer and living room she now found herself in. The floors were a mix of marble/granite, most of which was covered with rugs of various sizes, shapes, colors, and patterns. All of the necessities were there: furniture such as sofas, love seats, coffee and end tables, and a full 8 to 10 person dining room set situated towards the back of the room in a sizable dining niche. There was also a coat rack a few feet off to the side of the front door, which had a few different coats and jackets on it. The walls were decorated here and there with a few paintings, the largest of which was a painting of Naruto's parents, a smiling Minato Namikaze with his arm around a grinning and rather pregnant Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, one of Konoha's many public parks serving as the backdrop for this warm, touching scene. The various mantelplaces seemed to have a few trinkets and photos on them, giving a homey feeling to the rather large room. Kurenai was reminded that Naruto did mention interior design being one of his hobbies. She was brought out of her observations by the sound of Naruto's voice. "So, would you like the grand tour before we get down to business?" Kurenai smiled bemusedly. "Yes, I would, please." Naruto motioned for her to follow him. "This way, then." Kurenai followed Naruto as he showed her his home, beginning with the current floor. The first floor contained the kitchen, which was very large, spacious, and quite well equipped, the living room, the dining room, an indoor onsen built off to the side of the house with several different baths, each being large enough for about 6 people, as well as each bath having its own retractable roof if the bathers wanted an outdoor onsen, and an office/study. Naruto explained to her that the office on this floor was one of several in the house, and this particular one served the purpose of keeping his records and allowing him to handle his life/money matters as he called them. Kurenai couldn't imagine why he would need a 15-foot by 20-foot room filled with furnishings and filing cabinets simply to handle life/money matters. Of course, given the size of the house and property that Naruto owned, she could pretty well guess that he was fairly affluent. The rest of the first floor was just a few bathrooms, rooms primarily used for storage, or had not yet been given purposes by Naruto. Naruto proceeded to lead her to the second floor, which housed several guest bedrooms and corresponding bathrooms, as well as the master bedroom/bathroom suite, the ornateness of which astounded Kurenai. The floor of this room was covered in what appeared to be carpeting made of various animal furs. The walls were painted on a soft medium tan, accompanied by soft lighting, giving the room an alluring, almost romantic air, as though this would be Naruto's little piece of heaven on earth. The dressers with their accompanying vanity mirrors and nightstands were all made of or framed in solid oak, which Naruto had explained had come from the richer parts of the Land of Fire's forests. The bed, she noticed, was also quite large, easily capable of fitting several people comfortably, having an oval shape, and covered in crimson silk sheets and high-quality comforters, matching the crimson velvet drapes which outlined the windows, and were currently drawn back to let the day's natural light bathe the room. After seeing all of this, Naruto led her towards the walk-in closet, and allowed her to look inside it. Though quite spacious, she noted that most of it was empty, as it had been built for 2 rather than 1. Seeing that there wasn't much else to look at in the closet, she turned her attention to the master bath. The size of the bathroom, as well as the magnificence of the fixtures, caused Kurenai to gasp in awe. Inside the bathroom was a stand-up shower big enough for 2, with an outcropping allowing for the occupants to sit while showering. There were also several water jets on the walls, allowing for shower massage in addition to the main shower head. There was also a bathtub that was large enough for 2 occupants, complete with whirlpool jets to turn the bathtub into a jacuzzi. On the wall opposite the shower stall and bathtub were the toilet, the seat of which appeared to be quite comfortable, but other than that, was largely without any features of particular notice, and 2 separate his and hers sinks with corresponding vanities and medicine cabinets, all surfaced with polished marble. The floors and walls were covered in lavish tile, patterned in a mixture of pearl white, sky blue, and lime green. Naruto led Kurenai out of the master bathroom once he saw that she was starting to drool. He led her out to the balcony of the master suite, pointing out the grounds on the sides of the house and in the back, all of which was visible from the balcony. He pointed her to the training dojo that he had set up about 50 yards or so back from the house and off to the right, and gave her a rundown on the facilities and equipment that could be found inside the structure. He also pointed out the sizable shed where he kept his gardening and landscaping supplies, as well as a workshop where he planned a lot of his personal construction projects, as well as where he kept his forge for his blacksmithing. Off towards the very back of the property was a lakeside shore with its own pier. After he was done pointing out the grounds to her, he led her back into the house and back downstairs, where he showed her that, even though he had stairs that enabled ascent and descent into the basements, she wasn't sure she heard that right at first. Naruto had created and installed a seal array that acted as a teleporter between a corresponding seal array on each level of the house. He led her onto the seal array on the main floor, and teleported her to the second-level basement, explaining to her that they would finish the tour on the first-level basement, as that would be the area where they would be working. On one side of the second basement level was a control center of sorts, where Naruto would be able to monitor the condition of the seals that powered and controlled the house and grounds, as well as use certain master control and override seals should the need arise to do things such as lock down the house, or shut down any seals that might become compromised or damaged, somehow, regardless of how small the chance might be. On the other side was a musical studio, complete with more instruments than Kurenai could count, and some that she couldn't even identify. On top of this, it was set up with a full array of professional quality auditory equipment, microphones, speakers, amplifiers, soundboards, all connected in a complex web of wires, and even a recording and direction booth. It was quite extensive. Kurenai was amazed by the vastness of it all. Even Naruto's informing her of his mastery of various instruments could not prepare Kurenai for what she was currently seeing. Naruto brought her out of her daze as he led her to the seal in order to come to the final stop on the tour, the first-level basement directly above them. This level consisted of a library, which was quite vast, seeming to rival the village's main library, if not in size, then certainly in the amount and depth of content and subject matter that it contained. Though the Konoha library contained subject matter on almost any topic one might wish to peruse, whether civilian or shinobi, Naruto's was much more specialized. It only contained subject matter pertaining to topics that were of interest to him, such as various works on ninjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, and even some works on genjutsu, but it was the magnitude of the content that caught Kurenai's attention. In addition to these topics, there were various other volumes on any range of topics from strategy to politics to blacksmithing and any related topics to these fields of endeavor. Naruto even had a few medical texts in his library. What had surprised Kurenai even more than the amount of content that she could see, was that Naruto had told her that there was even more that wasn't visible at the moment. Naruto made very good use of storage seals, using them to create a complex indexing system where he could search for any specific scroll or book that he wanted, and willing that particular book to appear. In spite of the fact that there were tens of thousands of volumes stored in this system, Naruto had used one of his own fuinjutsu creations, a preservation seal, to supplement the storage/indexing seal array, which would keep it as fresh as the day he applied it, as well as preserving any additions he would need to make to it, though he would need to deactivate the preservation seal first, and then reactivate it once he finished the modifications. As he finished showing her around the library, he brought her into the room where they would be discussing what he had brought her over to discuss. As he showed her into the lab/workshop area, he created a shadow clone instructing him to bring them a tray of drinks and then get started on dinner. The clone gave a smart two-fingered salute before disappearing in a yellow flash. Naruto turned his attention to his guest once again, who was looking around the room, specifically at the level of detailed information that were on the massive white boards adorning all of the walls. "What do you think?" asked Naruto, bringing her out of her awestruck daze once again. Well, Kurenai started, before collecting herself and continuing, "I don't really know what to think." Naruto smiled in understanding as he continued, "Well, if you'll come to this board over here," he said as he led her to the whiteboard that was on the left wall in the back of the room. "These are a good portion of the notes that I have on the project I was telling you about." He turned his attention back to her. "You see, because of the size of my chakra reserves, I'll never have the level of control needed to cast even the smallest genjutsu, so I decided to focus my efforts in this particular art to finding ways to counter them. I figure that even if I can't cast them, I can at least make every effort to make sure that I can't be overcome by them. So, as you can see, I started studying genjutsu theory with that particular premise in mind." Kurenai nodded as Naruto led her to his desk, showing her the various documents and notes that he had compiled as part of this study. The clone that Naruto had sent to the kitchen had brought back a pitcher of lemonade and a pitcher of ice water with 2 glasses. Naruto thanked his clone before the clone flashed out again to continue preparing dinner. Naruto continued to explain to her that his study included the workings of the chakra system, learning how to discover the feel of one's own chakra, which led to him actually developing certain methods of directly controlling his own inner chakra flow, and even detecting foreign chakra the moment it invades his body, as each person's chakra signature is as unique as their fingerprint, or their retinal pattern. Kurenai immediately saw the genius of this particular approach to countering genjutsu. If this project yielded fruit, Naruto could very well have created a sub-discipline of genjutsu that could save countless lives of genjutsu-deficient shinobi on the battlefield. Naruto explained to her that he still needed to create a few test case scenarios so that he could run some clinical trials on what he had found. Kurenai, Understanding the field of genjutsu better than anyone else in the village could be instrumental in creating a comprehensive set of test cases to run through, which she found herself to be very excited about doing. They spent some time outlining the specifics of the trials that would need to be run, from the starting conditions to the ending conditions, as well as the expected results of each method that Naruto had outlined in his study, and specifics on how to quantify the results of each trial. Kurenai grew more and more excited about the day when they could present this to the Hokage for introduction into the academy, or even for trials in the field under much more erratic conditions. After a couple of hours, they had finished creating the basics of their test plan. Naruto would fill in the blanks and the rest of the details to have a complete set of clinical trials ready to run in a week's time. It was at this point that Naruto remembered about Kurenai's little plateau. "Oh, Kurenai?" asked Naruto, waiting as Kurenai turned her gaze to him. "I have an idea as to what might be causing your chakra plateau." Kurenai looked at him expectantly as he paused briefly before continuing. "How are your ninjutsu and your taijutsu?" She answered him honestly in a tone that belied no feelings or opinion on the matter in one direction or another. "Both are quite lacking, to be honest. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm better at genjutsu than even the 5 Kages are, I'd only be a special jounin, and not an elite one. I'd say that with the ninjutsu that I do know, I have jounin level mastery of them, but I only really know the substitution, the transformation, the clone and the teleportation. My taijutsu is the academy style with a few things I've thrown in, but I'd say that I can fight with that at solid chunin level." Naruto nodded knowingly before giving her his analysis of her problem. "I think your problem lies in the fact that you have so few ninjutsu, as well as being lacking in taijutsu. Most jounin have the ability to manipulate their chakra into at least 2 elements, and from what you told me about the chakra control exercises that you know, there are 2 vital types of chakra control exercise that you're missing. One is change in chakra shape, such as what Suna's puppeteers do with their chakra strings, and the other is change in chakra nature, which is how we make our elemental ninjutsu more effective. And also how medical ninjas turn their chakra into medical chakra. Let's take the second Hokage's infinite darkness jutsu. It requires both great control and some pretty good sized reserves, both of which you're finding to be beyond your current level, right?" Kurenai nodded in response, paying rapt attention to his explanation. Naruto continued, "Well, one thing you'll remember about Tobirama Senju was that not only did he have very formidable skills in genjutsu, but his main strength was his control over water-based ninjutsu, specifically, both his ability to change the chakra's shape into streams, waves, walls, etc., and also his chakra's nature, from normal chakra into water-based chakra, both of which added to the degree of control he had over his own chakra. On top of that, he was also able to use space/time ninjutsu almost to the level that my father could, and his physical battle prowess was on Might Guy's level if not beyond it. Being able to add precise amounts of chakra to his blows and his weapons also did a great deal to build both his control and his reserves. It was all of these different ways of controlling chakra that he employed that, combined together, gave him the overall degree of control required to use genjutsu as effectively as he could." Kurenai frowned in both thought and mild frustration at this. She could somehow sense in her gut that what he was saying was spot on, but she was also mildly frustrated that it wasn't until now that she had become aware of the problem. Deciding that continued frustration would serve no purpose, she nodded in acceptance of Naruto's analysis. "So I now know my problem. Do you have any ideas as to how I can fix it?" she asked in honest curiosity. "Actually, yes," replied Naruto, currently seeing several steps that she could take in correcting her problem. "I think the first 2 things we'll need to do are to train your body and your physical battle skills, using chakra to enhance them at the same time, and also help you with training change in chakra nature. Do you know what your primary elemental affinity is?" "Fire is my main element," responded Kurenai. "Okay, we can start there. Do you know the Shadow Clone Jutsu?" "No, I don't." "Well, all you need to do is create this hand sign." He showed her the cross-fingered hand sign for the Shadow Clone Jutsu, "and pump as much chakra as you can into it. Since you already have jounin level reserves, you won't have to worry about chakra exhaustion on your first attempt." Kurenai placed her fingers together as Naruto had demonstrated, molded as much chakra as she could, and shouted, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." To both their surprise, 15 clones of Kurenai came into existence. Naruto looked at the original to see that she was panting slightly. In a tone showing how impressed he was, he said, "Very good to get it on your very first try like that. It says a lot about the chakra control you have already, and it looks like this is about your safe limit at the moment. Remember what I said about shadow clones sending their experiences back to the user? What you're going to do is create about 5 shadow clones at a time right now, and use them to train your fire manipulation, while we train your body and give you more options with armed and unarmed combat, while also working on adding chakra to your physical combat skills." Kurenai smiled, somewhat tiredly at this, as she nodded, thankful that Naruto would take the time to help her as she would to help him. Naruto told her to go ahead and dispel her clones, as since they hadn't taken the time to learn or do anything, she could safely dispel them without a backlash. She did so, feeling some of her chakra returning to her. As she dispelled them, Naruto's clone came back in to inform them that dinner was ready. Naruto nodded in thanks, at which the clone dispelled, giving Naruto its memories of preparing some broiled fish and rice with a vegetable stir-fry, as well as some octopus with wasabi, and 2 chocolate parfaits for dessert. Naruto smiled at this, knowing Kurenai would be delighted at tonight's meal. Before heading up to dinner, however, Naruto took the time to work out a rough training schedule for him and Kurenai over the next week before they would be adding the clinical trials for genjutsu countering into the mix, which only took a few minutes. After this was done, Naruto motioned to her as he said, "Well, are you ready for dinner?" She smiled and nodded, "Yes, I am. I'm actually quite hungry." "Well, then let's go eat," he responded with a smile as he led her to the teleportation seal and brought her back to the main level. Once they got to the main level, the smells of delectably prepared dishes flooded their senses, causing their mouths to water. Naruto led Kurenai to the dining room table and pulled a chair out for her, allowing her to sit down. As Kurenai looked at the spread, she gasped audibly and grinned from ear to ear as she noticed her favorite dish among them. She allowed Naruto to prepare her plate, which included a portion of every dish at the table. As he put it down in front of her, he also poured her a small glass of vanilla-flavored vodka, causing her to smile even more. "Naruto, thank you so much. You didn't have to do all this," she responded in a tone that once again belied her gratitude. Naruto simply chuckled and smiled. "Hey, it's no problem at all. I'm glad to do something like this for you." After Naruto quickly prepared his own plate, he took the seat to Kurenai's immediate right at the round dining room table. They both gave a quick blessing and began to savor the meal before them, Kurenai at times closing her eyes and moaning at the overload of sensations that her taste buds were currently experiencing. "Naruto, this is wonderful." "Well, thank you. I'm glad you think so, as the chef never gets tired of compliments to his cooking," he responded jovially, enjoying both his meal and the opportunity that he was taking advantage of to entertain a first-time visitor to his home. As they ate, they began to talk, getting to know each other more. They would share stories about some of their more notable missions, whether notable meant embarrassing, such as a few of Naruto's escapades while on his training trip with Jiraiya, or Kurenai's attempts at staying sane on some missions that involved Kiba, or life-defining, such as Naruto's mission to Wave, guarding Tazuna, where a rogue ninja, known for being a bloodthirsty killer, became one of the men who would play a key role in molding Naruto into who he was today, or Kurenai's teaching of Yakumo Kurama before she had to seal her ID monster. After a while, as they were eating dessert, Kurenai, seeing all of the seals throughout Naruto's house, decided to indulge her curiosity. "So Naruto, the seals that you have throughout the property, here, what do they all do?" she asked, in a tone that showed her piqued interest in an art of which she had only rudimentary knowledge. "Well," Naruto began, "they do all kinds of things. The ones you saw on the wall outside, for example, have several functions. They reinforce the strength of the wall, enabling it to withstand all kinds of attacks by dispersing the force applied to a single spot and redistributing it throughout the wall, rendering both physical attacks and ninjutsu-based attacks against it ineffective. They also prevent anyone from being able to use chakra to stick to it, so that nobody can run up the wall and climb over the top of it. But even if they were to somehow get to the top of the wall, there are perimeter seals lined all along the top that would force any intruder that tried to cross the perimeter back out. The seal you saw on the gate is a locking mechanism that only recognizes the chakra signatures that I permit to be programmed into it. These systems allow me to completely control who can enter and who can't, making it the single, most secure structure in Konoha." Kurenai's eyes widened in surprise at this revelation. Even with her own knowledge of sealing, however fundamental it might be, she didn't realize that the kinds of things that Naruto had done with just his front gate and perimeter wall could be done at all, and certainly not with the precision that Naruto had explained to have done it with. Naruto continued, "There are also some environmental control seals that I can use to regulate all kinds of environmental factors on the property. Temperature, humidity, wind speed, precipitation, you name it." Kurenai's amazement at what Naruto could do using seals grew as Naruto continued to explain. "Now in the house, I've created several different other types of systems." He pointed to some of his appliances that were in sight of the table, and to several spots on the walls. "You notice these seals, here?" Kurenai nodded, listening intently as Naruto continued, "Well, instead of power drawn from the village's generators, I actually installed a complex system of seal arrays that enable the collection of nature energy out of the air, similar to when I gather nature energy to enter Sage mode, and convert it into either normal chakra or electricity, which provides power to the house and all of the other facilities on the grounds, as well as keeping the seals on the perimeter wall powered up. As they are always on, they need a power source to draw from." Kurenai's amazement could not be any more pronounced than it currently was. So many questions entered her mind about this obscure ninja art that Naruto had somehow taken to mastering, but as they were going as fast as they were coming, she decided to voice the ones that mattered to her the most. So, is there more that you can do with Fuinjutsu? Naruto responded with some enthusiasm. Oh, believe me, what I've told you, it's just the tip of the iceberg. You can do just about anything with seals. Fuinjutsu is far and away the most versatile, most flexible, and most dangerous ninja art out there. It can do anything that any other ninja art can do, even taijutsu and kenjutsu. Kurenai raised her eyebrows in surprise at this, and it can do an infinite number of things that none of the others can do. As powerful as I am now, the only type of opponent I'd ever fear facing would be another seal master. Kurenai simply sat there in shock, reflecting on what Naruto had just admitted to her. Naruto's respect for Fuinjutsu as a leading authority on the subject was not lost on her, and the idea that he would fear facing another seal master in battle, when he had faced down and beaten opponents such as Pain and Madara Uchiha, without fear, gave her a whole new level of respect and fear for the art, while also piquing her curiosity and interest in learning more. In the back of her mind, she started mulling over the idea of asking Naruto to take her on as an apprentice so that she might learn more of this art than she currently knew, which admittedly wasn't much. Naruto continued after a brief pause, breaking her out of her musings once more. One point of interest is that I was able to create a method to counter the caged bird seal of the Hyuga branch family. Really? Asked Kurenai with surprised curiosity. I know that Hinata always wanted to abolish the caged bird seal. Naruto's eyes seemed to darken when she mentioned Hinata's name, which did not go unnoticed by Kurenai. Kurenai narrowed her eyes at this, a thoughtful frown adorning her soft features. Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto. Naruto gave a weak, understanding smile. No, that's okay. It's not your problem, it's mine. Kurenai's frown deepened at his response. She took a moment to study him, looking into his eyes. She was surprised at how much they revealed to her, the same pain, isolation and loneliness that she had seen in a young, undersized genin with Naruto's face several years ago, but there was something different about it this time. It might have just been her experience with these same feelings in the last 4 years or so, but for the first time, she was about to understand and empathize with him. In a moment of boldness, she decided to ask the uncomfortable question, do you need to talk about this, Naruto? Naruto brought his gaze up to her, actually meeting her eyes. Looking into them, he realized that behind those mesmerizing ruby orbs was a woman who seemed to really know how he felt. He had caught the word need, as opposed to the word want in her question. He could tell that she knew he didn't necessarily want to talk about it, but he truly did feel the need to. He hadn't talked about this with anyone except Hayashi, and that was only because Hayashi brought it up with him in order to persuade him to try to fix the issue. Naruto sighed. Yeah, I think I do, he began as he took a breath to compose his thoughts, trying to determine where exactly to begin. Hinata's been a particular sore spot for me ever since the war. He frowned before continuing, Kurenai simply waiting quietly for him to continue at his own pace, giving him her undivided attention. He finished collecting his thoughts and proceeded, I just can't help but wonder how someone so warm and caring could become as cold and as heartless as she has. When we started our relationship, even though we were in a war zone where anything could happen, we were happy at first. As she started to change, it had hurt me so much. I was watching it happen, and I couldn't do anything to stop it, and Kami only knows I tried. I know she wasn't well respected in camp, even Hayashi and Hanabi didn't treat her with any respect as a comrade, and it had finally just got to be too much for her, you know? Kurenai nodded, her face having saddened at the question. Like Naruto, she had also tried to turn her from that path, ironically pointing to Naruto as the example to follow. Hinata, however, for the first time, when looking at Naruto, instead of being inspired, lost faith, believing that she would never have his strength. She had finally been overwhelmed and broken by the coldness and seeming hatred directed at her from her supposed comrades in the camp, as well as from her own family. What entered her heart afterwards was frightening, and became the cause of nightmares for many. Naruto continued, I tried to encourage her, let her know that I was there for her. It was like like she just decided to allow herself a little taste of hatred, and when she did, it was like she just enjoyed the feeling, she just seemed to exult in it, and she even became proud of it after a while. It was almost like watching Sasuke all over again. It's actually what caused our relationship to end, and she just got worse from there. Kurenai, knowing exactly what Naruto was talking about, took a moment to interrupt his thoughts. You know, I saw the same thing you did. I loved her like a daughter. The truth is that I still do, but her growing coldness and hatred just made having any kind of loving and positive relationship with her impossible. She and I don't talk anymore, either, for the very same reason, and I was so angry with her after I heard about what she did to Hanabi. Naruto closed his eyes and nodded sadly, remembering the first time Konohamaru brought his new fiancée over to his home in the wheelchair that she had to spend most of her time confined to. It was Konohamaru who had told him that Hanabi had suffered her injuries at Hinata's hands. Hanabi could not walk now without the assistance of either a walker or someone she could lean against for support, and even then, she could only do it for short periods of time before vertigo and dizziness would get the better of her. She could no longer mold chakra properly without severe pain, she would never be able to fight again, and these injuries were untreatable. The damage had been too extensive to repair completely. She was little more than a cripple, now, and it was painful to see. While Naruto's thoughts were occupied with Hinata's journey into darkness, Kurenai thought back once more to the times where she had tried to steer Hinata back to who she was, and the one point that seemed to stand out more than any other in her mind was Naruto's example. This brought her thoughts to the times that she had watched the tall blonde whose company she was now enjoying. She remembered watching his fight with Kiba in their first Chunin exam preliminaries, completely writing Naruto off as the loser in the fight, only to watch as, beaten, battered and bloody, he continued to stand back up, again and again and again. He just would not stay down, and in the end, he won the fight, shocking everyone there except Kakashi and, strangely enough, Asuma, now that she thought about it. Even in retrospect of his victory against Kiba, she, along with almost everyone else in the stadium at the final round a month later, had written Naruto off once more as someone who didn't stand a chance only to be proven wrong again. How many other instances could she point to? Naruto had believed in Kurenai as a sensei at a time where Kurenai couldn't even believe in herself. Naruto was able to help Kurenai's estranged student Yakumo to overcome her own inner demon. In effect, it was Naruto who brought her and her team back together, while at the same time playing an instrumental role in healing the damaged bond between Kurenai and her first apprentice. Then there was the fight against pain. She was indoors, sedated in the medical ward, having just miscarried her and Asuma's child due to being hit by falling debris, but she had heard about the fight mostly from Sakura and Hinata, and listening as the rest of the village confirmed what she had been told, Naruto had defeated an opponent who had not only never lost a battle, but whom the Hokage herself could not touch. She had seen Naruto around a few times after that, but it was always in passing. Even with his random outbursts of hyperactive joy, he never looked truly happy to her, even being worshipped as a hero, the only exception being when he and Hinata first decided to become involved with each other, and even that was short-lived as Hinata's descent into hatred and callousness began. Through it all, whether he was labeled as the village pariah, the village idiot, or the village hero, he always had the same look in his eyes, the same look he had right now, pain, isolation, loneliness, at least with regards to when he was reminded of his past. But somehow there was more. Seeing the same eyes any time she looked into a mirror in recent memory, Kurenai could see that he was still quite lonely. "Naruto?" asked Kurenai, in an effort to get his attention. Naruto abruptly came out of his reflections as he blinked and turned to her. "Yeah? Do you still talk with any of the Konoha 11, or your old senseis?" she asked, curious yet concerned. Naruto gave a wry smile and a bittersweet chuckle at her question. "It's that easy for you to see, huh?" She nodded with an apologetic grimace on her face. "Well, Shikamaru and I talk as often as we can. He's my best friend from the Konoha 11 right now, and he's actually been a phenomenal help to me since I got back from training with pervy sage." Kurenai giggled at the term of endearment that Naruto had given Jiraiya, remembering how much it used to annoy the Toad Sannin to be called that. Naruto smiled at her giggle before continuing. "Did you know that it was Kakashi who came up with the shadow clone training method?" Kurenai shook her head. "No, I didn't realize that." "Well, he came up with it specifically for me at the time. I needed to be able to take years' worth of training and condense it into days. I had learned that I was a wind type, and Kakashi was training me in how to change the nature of my chakra into wind chakra. It would take a lot longer for me to master than most, because my ungodly huge chakra levels inhibit my control like you wouldn't believe." Naruto sighed as he knew this could drag a while if he didn't get to the point. "Well, long story short, I mastered the training, and used it to create my wind style, Rasengan, and wind style, Rasen Shuriken. Well, even though I was recognized as a powerful ninja, I was still considered a moron by just about everyone. While we were on the front during the war, Shikamaru requested that I be transferred under his command. He remembered some of the harebrained, on-the-fly battle plans that I would come up with when he and I were on missions together, and he had remembered Kakashi's training of my chakra nature. Shikamaru thought that if it would work with my chakra, why couldn't he apply the same method to sharpen my mind as well?" Kurenai raised both eyebrows in surprise at this. "So that's how it happened," she mused, remembering the glint of intelligence that she had seen in his eyes for the first time today. "Needless to say," continued Naruto, in an effort to wrap his story up, "after countless hours of groups of clones reading the exact same books under different environmental conditions, and after multiple games of shogi played against both Shikamaru and myself hundreds of times over, Shikamaru began to notice that not only was I learning the things that were in all of those books more effectively, my ability to think became a lot sharper as well. Shikamaru continued training my brain this way, And he also started pulling Grandma Tsunade in to run medical scans on my brain after telling her about my training and the results. Grandma discovered that my brain was making more and more accelerated neural connections, and my IQ was also going up in leaps and bounds. Nice little side effect of this was that my chakra control got a little better, as my mental started to catch up to my physical a little bit. Kurenai asked curiously, "So what is your IQ now?" Naruto answered with just a hint of pride, "Right now, my IQ is about on par with Shikamaru's." "Wow," said Kurenai, in quiet astonishment. She hadn't realized that he had gotten that smart. Though, knowing Shikamaru the way she did, this is probably the end he had in mind when he started training Naruto's mind. If what Naruto said wasn't an exaggeration, then even Sakura's intelligence now paled in comparison to his own. Sakura, thought Kurenai, reminded of the question she had originally asked him. "So, do you still talk to anyone from the old team Kakashi?" Sai died in the last battle of the war. Kurenai nodded sadly, remembering when they had held his funeral and carved his name onto the memorial stone. Kakashi doesn't really do the whole friends outside of work thing. We talk pretty regularly, and we even train and spar together, still, but that's about it, and if Kakashi's okay with that, so am I. Sakura, that's kind of a strange situation. He trailed off, trying to figure out how to explain his and Sakura's estrangement. "How do you mean?" mused Kurenai with a curious frown. "Sakura hasn't talked to me since I killed Sasuke." Kurenai seemed to immediately grow angry at this, but Naruto quickly stepped in, raising his hands to her in an effort to calm her down as he continued, "She doesn't hate me for it. She knows that I did what I had to do. And I know that she doesn't wish any ill will on me or anything like that. But the simple truth is that she loved him, traitor or not. Her avoidance of me is mainly so that she won't say or do something that she'll regret later. She knows she shouldn't have felt the way she did, but she also knows herself well enough to know that more often than not, she thinks with her heart and not with her head. I avoid her because I don't like getting hit when she has lapses in impulse control. She'll come around when she's ready. I know she will." Kurenai seemed satisfied with this answer. After Naruto explained to her that he and the others had just sort of grown apart over the years. They had their own responsibilities with their distinctive careers and as clan heirs, where Naruto was a unique case. He was a clan head, not a clan heir, and he was Konoha's only seal master as well as the Toad Sage. The scope of his duties, even though he didn't go on too many missions, as well as the magnitude of his responsibilities put him in a position where he would not be able to interact with them much, if at all. This, of course, didn't help the fact that he still felt somewhat isolated. And yet the strength of character and generosity of spirit that he displayed throughout his life never once wavered, never once did he give up, never once did he let the hurt and anguish he was feeling get the better of him. She couldn't help but wonder where his inner strength came from. The more she thought about it, the more she had to know. And she began hesitantly, not sure if this was an appropriate question or not. She chose to err on the side of caution. "Can I ask you a question of a personal nature?" "Shoot," he responded, affirmatively. Kurenai began, "Well, I've seen people like Sasuke and Hinata surrender to either their own inner demons, or to demons that others plague them with, and I remember the times I've watched you over the years. I need to ask you." The tone of her voice became much more earnest as she asked, "How do you find the strength to keep moving forward, and becoming a better and better man, when so many others have completely collapsed having faced far less? How are you able to keep going?" Naruto adopted a thoughtful pose to this question, determining how best to answer. A smile slowly crept onto his face as he remembered her desire to hear him sing and see him perform. He looked at her with a knowing gaze as he answered, "You said you wanted me to perform for you, right?" Her eyes widened at this question as he continued, "Well, I think I know the best way to answer your question." He stood up and offered a hand to assist her out of her chair as he said, "Come with me." She took his hand, allowing his to assist her to a standing position before letting go of his hand and following him to the teleportation seal. Naruto transported them to the second-level basement and led her into the recording studio. After creating a few shadow clones, who immediately started getting to work setting up instruments and connecting all of the accompanying equipment, Naruto then led her into the director's booth so that she could listen from there. Kurenai waited patiently while Naruto and his clones set up the instruments that they would be playing for the song he had in mind: 2 standard electric guitars, one for rhythm guitar and one for lead guitar, a bass guitar, a steel guitar, a keyboard programmed to sound like a grand piano, and a drum set. She found herself getting a little excited about hearing Naruto perform, believing that it would be quite an experience. Naruto spoke. "Now, Kurenai, I'm going to ask you to bear with me here, because nobody's ever heard me sing before. This song is called Do Something, and I heard it a couple of years ago. It just kind of resonated with me, because it's how I've tried to approach my life. So here goes. Let me know what you think afterwards, okay?" And as Kurenai nodded, he began to strum on his guitar. Listen to Do Something, by the Eagles, lyrics in black and bold, 1. After the short opening, Naruto began to sing in the most melodic, clear and beautiful tenor that Kurenai had ever heard. I'd been walking through the fields and on the streets of town trying to make sense of what you left me. Kurenai found herself to be very surprised as his clones began to play the remaining instruments in time with Naruto. Everything that I believed in has been turned upside down and now it seems the whole wide world's gone crazy. Kurenai simply continued to listen, becoming enraptured with Naruto's voice. And when I feel like giving up and I'm ready to walk away in the stillness, I can hear a voice inside me say. Kurenai's eyes began to water as she heard Naruto and all of his clones sing in beautiful harmony, singing both the lead and background parts. The crooning of the clones to Naruto's lead vocals moved her more still. Do something, it's too late for saving face, don't just stand there taking up space, why don't you do something? Do something, it's not over, no, it's never too late. You were always on my side, love was all we had, now I sit and watch our life unraveling. I pick up the morning paper and all the news is bad, how did we get on this road we're traveling? And when I feel like giving up and there's nowhere left to go, that's the time I dig down deep, the only thing I know. Do something, don't leave it up to someone else, don't feel sorry for yourself, why don't you do something? Do something, it's not over, no, it's never too late. Kurenai's complete attention became more and more fixated upon her blonde host as he continued to perform for her. Intense emotion continued to well up inside of her, threatening to burst forth as Naruto continued singing and playing. Run away, you can't run away, on your honor, for your pride you'll sleep better knowing you tried. As the Narutos extended the note untried, and the harmonies continued to blend, Kurenai found herself so overwhelmed by the beauty of what she was listening to that she could no longer hold her tears back. They freely began to flow as she began to sniffle, a few involuntary sobs escaping, Kurenai being all the more overwhelmed knowing that Naruto was singing this song from his heart and his life experiences. To do something, it's too easy not to carry, you're not ready for the rockin' chair, get up and do something, don't wait too long, even if it's wrong, you've got to do something, it's not over, no, it's never too late. Naruto played the last few notes of the song and closed it out, he and his band placing instruments back on their stands before he dismissed his clones. He asked, so how'd I do? To Kurenai as he turned to her, noticing her stand up from the couch she was on. He saw that she was crying, on the verge of sobbing, her eyes wide in a mix of shock and awe. This caused him to frown in concern. He was about to ask if she was alright as she spoke in a voice that was equally thick with tears, you've never sang in front of anyone else before? Ever? Naruto, still frowning, shook his head, no. Kurenai shook her head in disbelief, speaking in a tone just above a whisper, you have the most amazing voice I've ever heard. Naruto blushed at this, and gave an embarrassed smile and chuckle, RTH thanks. Why me? Naruto frowned again, this time in confusion, Kurenai elaborated, still in tears, why did you choose to reveal this part of yourself to me, of all people, when you've never revealed it to anyone else? What have I done to deserve all this? Naruto simply smiled warmly as he answered, you asked? You not only asked me to perform for you, but you also asked me a question that probably took some guts for you to put out there. Nobody else has ever done that with me, not even the few people that really do know me, and I appreciate the fact that you want to see the person behind all the talk. Kurenai couldn't help but smile in return, tears still falling. She walked up to him, taking one of his hands in both of hers, and looked him dead in the eye. Naruto, you've made what started out to be a terrible day for me and turned it into a day filled with wonderful surprises. You've opened up whole new worlds for me, first with your genjutsu countering project, then with telling me so much about sealing, and just now, by playing for me. She paused for just a moment, holding his gaze with her own. Thank you for sharing things that are so special with me and also for allowing me to get to really know you a little more. Naruto smiled warmly at her in return as he responded back, I was glad to let you in. Kurenai, thanks for allowing me a peek at who you really are, as well. Kurenai nodded, letting go of his hand, the smile never leaving her face. She was reminded of her desire to learn sealing, so she asked, you're already doing so much for me, but I was wondering if you maybe wouldn't mind taking me on as an apprentice and teaching me Fuinjutsu? Naruto's eyes lit up at this, much to Kurenai's delight. Never before had anyone shown any degree of interest in Fuinjutsu that would merit learning from him. With a wide grin, he exclaimed enthusiastically, I'd be glad and honored to. I've been wanting to teach someone else about sealing for a while now. Kurenai couldn't help but laugh warmly at his enthusiasm. She nodded and thanked him. As they both continued looking at each other, silence ensued. With nothing to say, each of them couldn't help but take notice of the other. It wasn't long before both of their faces began to get warmer. After a few moments, Naruto broke the stare off as he began to scratch the back of his head sheepishly, and turned to look at the clock on the wall. His eyes widened in surprise at the time. It was 9:30 in the evening. "Wow, I didn't realize how late it was," he exclaimed in his surprise. Kurenai turned to look at the clock herself. "Wow, it is getting late." Turning back to Naruto, she said with no small amount of regret, "Well, I guess we probably should call it a night, huh?" Naruto nodded, just as regretfully, "Yet tomorrow we start your training, and I'll also add a couple of extra hours for Fuinjutsu instruction, so we probably ought to get a good night's rest." Naruto led Kurenai back to the teleportation seal, taking them back to the main level. Naruto then led Kurenai to the front door, and escorted her outside. Kurenai gasped in surprise once more as the marble walkway began to illuminate before the pair making their way to the front gate of the grounds, Naruto unsealing the gates, allowing them to open to that Kurenai could exit the property. "Ever the gentleman?" Naruto asked. "Might I escort you home?" Kurenai shook her head. "No thank you, Naruto. While I do appreciate the offer, you need rest as much as I do. So I'll just teleport myself home." Naruto nodded in understanding. "Very well, then. Good night, Kurenai. I'll see you here tomorrow morning at 8? Kurenai nodded. "I'll see you here." Kurenai walked up to Naruto and wrapped her arms around him in a warm hug. Naruto gently pulled her in as she gently squeezed him a little tighter. "Thank you, Naruto, for today." She pulled away, wishing him a good night before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Naruto wistfully smiled as he reflected on today's turn of events. He resealed the gate and went back into the house. Noting the mess that had been left behind after dinner, he took a few moments to clean the dishes off the table and put them in his dishwasher. After he started it, he left for his bedroom, and realizing just how tired he was, he put his sleepwear on and got into his bed, falling asleep almost immediately upon hitting the pillow, his last conscious thoughts on what tomorrow would bring for both him and his new apprentice/partner. Konoha had begun to warm up a bit as mid-January rolled around. That cold spell, along with a lot of the rain that accompanied it, left a lot of people sick in bed. Enko Yumino had been one of them. Granted, since she and Irika had gotten married, she no longer went around essentially flashing everyone she came across, but she didn't exactly dress for cold weather, either. The only real difference in her dress style while on duty was that she would wear dark orange shorts that extended mid-thigh in place of the too short skirt that she used to wear, and she also wore a black halter top over her fishnets. She still wore the tan trench coat and shin guards, and kept her hair in the same pineapple-style ponytail that she had always had it in. While better at staving off the cold than her previous style of dress would have been, it certainly wasn't much better. Of course, being a stubborn one, she would not be told, by Irika or anyone else, that she should cover up to keep herself warm. When that flu bug hit her, she spent every moment in bed wishing she had heeded her husband. But that was in the past, and she had happier things to occupy her thoughts with right now. Enko had been pleasantly surprised when her best friend Kurenai invited her to lunch a couple of days ago. It had been so long since the two of them had really spent quality time together or talked about anything significant that Enko sometimes felt that the two of them were drifting apart, and that had bothered her. So, when Kurenai invited her to her favorite restaurant for lunch and girl time, she happily accepted. Enko was currently sitting at her personal table in her culinary haven, the Dango Pit, waiting for Kurenai to show up. She didn't have to wait for long as Kurenai walked in. She was wearing the same smile she had on when she first caught up with Enko and invited her to lunch. The fact that Kurenai was smiling at all these days struck Enko as a bit out of the ordinary, but to see her wearing it now as well? She was curious as to what would make Kurenai this happy when for the last 4 years or so, happiness had been nothing more than an abstract idea to the woman. Kurenai looked straight at Enko and waved to her, heading over to join her at the table that the two always ate at when they came here. "Well, you've certainly been a lot more chipper lately. What's going on?" asked Enko with a curious smirk as Kurenai sat down. "Quite a lot actually," started Kurenai. "I've been participating in a major project and I've been getting additional training." A sparkle of intriguing mirth could be seen in Kurenai's vermilion orbs as she added, "I've also been given an apprenticeship." "Really?" asked Enko, now even more intrigued. "Come on, don't keep me in suspense here. Tell me about it all. What brought all this on?" Kurenai began to recall the tale. "Well, it started last week. You know what I always do on that day." Enko nodded and narrowed her eyes, focusing on Kurenai as she told her story. Kurenai continued, "Well, everything started pretty much the same way as it did during the previous 3 years. This time, though, luck would have it that it rained rather hard that day, and it was also one of the colder days of this cold spell that we just got out of. I was wearing pretty much what you see me in now. Kurenai brought her hands up and moved them over herself to indicate the bandage dress that she was currently wearing before proceeding, and I felt that if I were to go home to get some rain gear, that I just wouldn't be able to get back out there, so I decided to take my chances. It started raining after I was at the cemetery, and I was there for a good solid hour or more. I heard a few perverts off in the distance talking about what they wanted to do to me at this. Anko responded with a frown that displayed both anger and disgust as Kurenai continued, and then, a few seconds later, I felt a coat draped over me. I looked up to see who put it on me, and it was Naruto Namikaze of all people. It was his sage cloak. Kurenai's eyes almost seemed to gloss over as she began to recall the rest of the story. Looking back, I'm not sure what it was, but when he just gave me a sad smile, I don't know, it was like she paused, trying to find the right words. It was like I could tell that he somehow understood me at that moment. As I looked at him, it was like the dam just broke, and I just started letting everything I was feeling out right into his shirt, she added with a chuckle as Anko just smiled in an amused fashion and nodded, waiting for her to continue. She did. Well, after that, he activated a seal in his cloak that dried me off and got me warm, and then he left me alone so I could finish visiting Asuma. When I got up to leave, he was waiting for me at the gate. It was still raining, so he wouldn't let me give his cloak back to him. Anko smiled knowingly as Kurenai had told her this. Leave it to my little bro to do something like that for a person in pain. He always does seem to know how to help. Kurenai continued once again. Well, after that, we just started talking, and we went to Ichiraku's for some lunch. We both got to know each other, you know. I learned so much about him that I didn't know, and I was shown that some things about him that I thought I knew were completely wrong, but anyway, we just talked, and he told me about a project he was working on that he was actually going to find me to ask for input on, anyway. So he invited me into his home. He invited you into his home? Interrupted Anko, slamming her hands down on the table and leaning forward, openly showing her surprise at this turn of events. Kurenai instinctively leaned backwards wide-eyed, not expecting such a reaction from Anko. Backing off the table in her hands, Anko continued. Kurenai, do you have any idea just how many people have been invited inside that house? Kurenai, not having moved from her position nor changed her facial expression, shook her head in the negative. Me, Irika, Konohamaru, Hanabi Hyuga, Shikamaru and Temari. Anko leaned forward again as she finished, and that's it. Not even the Hokage has been inside his house. Kurenai's eyes seemed to grow even wider as her eyebrows shot up. She began to explain the situation. Well, the reason I was in his house is because that's where he kept all of his research for the project. Anko narrowed her eyes at this. Well, okay, she said, not sounding convinced of her reasoning before putting a smile back on and bringing her back to the story. Sorry to interrupt, please continue. Kurenai seemed to trail off in an effort to collect her thoughts after being interrupted before continuing, but with what would qualify for Kurenai as great excitement and enthusiasm. Naruto's essentially creating an entirely new sub-discipline of genjutsu that would give any ninja who's weak against genjutsu a fighting chance against a strong genjutsu user. What he's doing is creating a series of techniques and methods that could in theory counter any genjutsu thrown at someone. And it's really coming along. When he showed me his notes and his research, I was stunned at the level of thought and detail he had put into this. He's using everything from basic to advanced chakra theory, to the study of the chakra network from a medical standpoint. It's incredible what he's working to accomplish. But anyway, after that, he made dinner to thank me for his help. Anko raised an eyebrow and smirked once more in response to this. And he's also the one who's been giving me the extra training I was telling you about. My apprenticeship is also to Naruto. I'm taking up Fuinjutsu, and he's my Fuinjutsu master. Anko's eyes narrowed once more, this time in thought as she studied Kurenai's body language and posture while talking about her experience with Naruto. Kurenai seemed to notice this and decide to draw Anko's attention to it. Anko? Asked Kurenai suspiciously, causing Anko to give a sly his response, her eyes remaining narrow and the smirk never leaving her face. Kurenai continued, with a little more force behind her suspicious tone, what's going on in that head of yours right now? Anko wasn't the least bit bothered by the question. I'll let you know once I've heard more, please continue. Kurenai narrowed her eyes in response to this, but decided to let it drop for now. She knew Anko would tell her soon enough, probably by way of teasing her to try to get under her skin. She accepted Anko prompting and continued to tell her about what Naruto had told her concerning her chakra reserves/control plateau, and what she could do about it. This idea actually fascinated Anko, as she didn't know quite so much about chakra theory herself. Kurenai elected to leave out Naruto singing and performing for her, feeling as though it wasn't her place to tell Anko about that part of Naruto's life. As their food and drinks come to the table, they both started to eat while Kurenai told Anko all about the training that she had been doing under Naruto's supervision. Weekends are good, thought Irika to himself with a smile as he sat at the counter in Ichiraku's. He was currently enjoying a steaming hot bowl of chicken ramen with all the fixings. It was times like this, where he could simply slow down and relax, that made life enjoyable for him. While many shinobi craved excitement and fast-paced adventure, Irika had already had his fill of that. This was actually what caused to want to teach at the academy. Thoughts of the academy always led him to many of the students he taught over the years, but one student always stood out first and foremost in his mind, his all-time favorite student and surrogate little brother, Naruto Uzumaki. He never could get used to the idea that Naruto's last name was now Namikaze, as it just seemed to take away from his identity, at least in Irika's mind. He'd think or hear Naruto Uzumaki, and the brotherly feelings he had for Naruto would just swell to the surface with a vengeance. He'd hear Naruto Namikaze, and he just didn't react the same way. It was as though the name belonged to someone else in his mind. He couldn't explain it, really, nor could he give rhyme or reason for it. It just was what it was to him, the same way that Irika would always be Irika-sensei to Naruto, and it would likely never change. His thoughts were interrupted as he heard the telltale sound of the flaps at the front entryway to the stand being pulled aside by a customer entering the stand. He turned to see the man who was currently occupying his thoughts enter the stand. As they made eye contact, both men smiled and greeted each other warmly, Irika inviting Naruto to take the seat next to him. As Naruto sat down, Ayame came and greeted him before hitting him on the head with the ladle in her hand, and chiding him on not making an appearance for several days at the ramen stand again. Naruto simply apologized to Ayame while grinning and laughing sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. His apology, and some promises to come visit more often, seemed to placate the young woman as she took his usual order of a Naruto special. Irika became surprised, however, when he ordered a Kurenai special on top of this. Naruto?" asked Irika, his tone showing his curiosity and confusion. Naruto turned to him, the look on his face telling Irika that there was a story to this. "What's this about a Kurenai special, and what's the story behind it?" Naruto began to tell Irika the same story that Kurenai was telling Anko at the Dango pit. To say that Irika was both intrigued and surprised at this particular development in Naruto's, and especially in Kurenai's, life, would have been an understatement. Of course, not having the same teasing nature that his wife did, his reaction was a little different, as were the questions he started to ask. "You know, Naruto, it seems to me that you've taken a rather strong liking to Kurenai," said Irika in his direct, yet non-judgmental way. Naruto responded in a manner indicating that he didn't feel teased or threatened in the least by his statement. "I don't know, Irika-sensei. I'm not saying I don't, but the truth is I'm not sure how I should feel, or what I should do about it. You know, yourself, that I really haven't had any luck or lasting success with women." Irika nodded sadly at this, knowing full well what Naruto's romantic history was like. He remembered how Sakura used to abuse him over the most unimportant things, or simply for the sake of her own annoyance. He also recalled when she would later try to use his feelings for her in an effort to try to bring Sasuke Uchiha back to the village, or to even deter him from pursuing Sasuke any further. Irika also knew that Naruto and Sakura didn't talk these days after he had killed Sasuke in battle, and only gave each other a small smile and either a curt nod or a quick wave when they ran across each other in the village. Immediately after this, both would turn and walk in opposite directions to avoid further interaction. Irika's reflections took a slightly darker turn after this, as he recalled what Naruto had told him about his short-lived relationship with Hinata Hyuga. On occasion, he had seen Hinata out and about in the village, usually with a contingent of Hyuga branch members in tow to act as bodyguards/attendants. Gone was the shy and kind young girl that he had graduated just 8 years ago. In her place was a woman who, while quite beautiful and desirable, carried herself with a coldness and an indifference to those around her, culminated in a perpetual glare and an almost half-scowl that made her seem quite ugly to him. Even the way she spoke nowadays, when Irika had actually heard her speak, was just frigid, as though it was an annoyance at best and a transgression at worst to force Hinata to use her voice and deal with people. Even Lord Hiashi hadn't been like this when dealing with those in the village. He had been rather arrogant and aloof, for certain, but he wasn't heartless the way Hinata had seemed to become. Irika finally responded to Naruto's comment, "Yeah, I do know what you mean, Naruto." Irika adopted a firm expression that Naruto often saw on his face when in his classroom, the expression that Irika adopted when he wanted Naruto to pay particularly close attention to him. Seeing that Irika had Naruto's attention, he continued, "But I also don't think that you should let that stop you from pursuing something, or someone, that could potentially be very good for you." "Easier said than done, sensei," responded Naruto with seeming indifference. "I know," said Irika, who did know what Naruto was saying. Irika continued, "Naruto, you trust me, right?" To which he received an apprehensive nod from the tall blonde, as this question usually preceded a topic of discussion that could be rather uncomfortable for him. Naruto was proved right in his assumption as Iruka followed with, "Then I want you to tell me something. What exactly is keeping you from exploring this? And I want to hear it all, not just the pat answer." Naruto, having been about to give him the pat answer, closed his mouth and collected his thoughts. When he was done, he simply stared down toward the counter and answered Iruka, "I guess a lot of things. My fear of what might happen in light of my own history with women is a small part of it, but there's more to it than that. I mean, this is Kurenai Yuhi we're talking about here. And while I know now that she's not the ice queen that she's been made out to be, she's 14 years older than me. I might as well be a kid to her. And on top of that, I don't want to do anything that will make her feel uncomfortable or uneasy with me. I mean, I know how to behave like a gentleman, and I try very hard to be one, but at the same time, I've never been in a relationship that's lasted for any significant length of time. I wouldn't know how to be a good partner to anyone. But there's also the fact that she's suffered through her own pain as well, and I certainly don't want to add to that, inadvertently or otherwise." Naruto turned his attention back to Iruka. "I guess it all boils down to the fact that I feel that I don't have anything to offer her that she would need. What would someone like her see in someone like me, you know?" Iruka had adopted a knowing smirk that only grew as Naruto had explained his reasoning. He had to have picked that up from Enko, he thought to himself. Iruka then answered, in an amused and knowing tone, "That's what you're worried about. You don't feel like you have anything to offer her?" Naruto nodded in a somewhat helpless fashion. Iruka continued, "Okay, where to begin? Here's what you have to offer a woman like Kurenai." He began to tally using his fingers as he listed the things that Naruto did in fact have to offer: a stable home, a steady career and income, real friendship without any ulterior motive, genuine companionship, the potential to build a family, a man who can protect her or her loved ones from just about any threat out there, and from what you're telling me, someone who has the ability to make her laugh or smile almost on command. If these things aren't good enough for a woman, then frankly she doesn't deserve you." "He's right, Naruto," came the voice of Tsuchi who, with I had started listening with interest to the two, "and from what I saw when the two of you were last in here, I don't think that a potential future with her is really that far-fetched." I added, "That's true, Naruto. I think you might have a very good thing within reach. And even if things don't necessarily go the way you'd like, at least you went for it, and I think with the kind of person Kurenai seems to be, you wouldn't be any worse off for trying." Naruto still seemed to be a bit uneasy at the possibility of pursuing anything further at this point. Sensing his unease the way only a woman could, I added, "Naruto, nobody's saying you have to jump into the deep end head first. If you're that nervous, just be friends with her for now, and pay a little attention to the signals she sends. If you don't know how to interpret them, you can come to me, and I can tell you what they mean, okay?" Iruka and Tsuchi both nodded in agreement, impressed at the wisdom of Iam's suggestion. This also seemed to ease Naruto quite a bit as well, as he visibly relaxed at Iam's advice and her offer to help him navigate through the waters of female subtlety that most men often found very treacherous. Naruto smiled and nodded in gratitude to the three of them. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the advice, and I think I'll do what you suggested, Iam." Iam smiled warmly and nodded, "That's what your real friends are here for, buddy." Tsuchi and Iam both took their leave of the pair to go take some other orders and also to prepare Iruka's and Naruto's own meals for them. As they waited, Iruka continued in an effort to keep making conversation, "So, tell me about Kurenai's apprenticeship and about the training you two have been doing." Naruto's eyes lit up at this, as he began to recount the past week of training and work that he and Kurenai had been doing. Naruto, or more accurately, Naruto's shadow clone, was making his way to Grandma Tsunade's office to give his creator's report and make his request. He had just left his boss as the original Naruto had gone into a Crocus to grab some lunch. He thought he heard Iruka's voice come from the stand, and as much as he would have liked to say hi to Iruka-sensei himself, he was created at his boss's leisure for his boss's purposes. Sometimes being a shadow clone really sucked. "Yeah, I hope you enjoy your time slacking off while making me do all your dirty work, you jerk," he thought bitterly, as he made his way to talk to the Hokage. As he walked down the road, the villagers all smiled and waved to him as they normally did. He, in turn, greeted them back as he continued on his way. For some reason, a leisurely stroll to the Hokage's office just felt kind of nice right now. It had nothing to do with the fact that he would have to dispel the moment he was finished with his business in Tsunade's office. Not at all. He thankfully only crossed paths with two fangirls on his way to the Hokage Tower, politely turning both away, and continuing forward. Well, it could certainly have been worse. He thought as he remembered the occasional stampede of fangirls that he used to have to outrun, and even flash away from on occasion. Granted, he didn't have to deal with stampedes anymore, but the occasional fangirl, or group of fangirls, was still a major pain in his backside. He had finally arrived at the Hokage Tower and began to make his way up the winding staircase to the level where Tsunade's office was located. As he entered the reception area, he saw Shizen at her station happily, a little too happily in his opinion, preparing several 3-foot-high piles of paperwork for Tsunade to read through and complete. "Shizen, I really hope those aren't for me," said Naruto, already beginning to feel that there were certain things about being Hokage that he would find very distasteful. Shizen looked up and smiled at seeing her current visitor. "Oh hey, Naruto. No, don't worry. These require Tsunade's signature directly. You have nothing to worry about, at least not from any of these piles." "Good to know," he replied, knowing that Tsunade would use training for the office of Hokage as a convenient excuse to slough some of her paperwork onto Naruto. While it was good training for him, she had a tendency to make him do more than he should have had to at this point. Although, it was this little problem that helped Naruto to find the perfect solution: send a shadow clone to Tsunade's office on the days where he was being trained for Hokage duties. This gave him an even more brilliant flash of inspiration. He could use many shadow clones at once to get paperwork done more quickly. Of course, he had made it a point not to do this, because he knew that Tsunade would just give him more and more of her responsibilities and paperwork while she could sit back and drink to her heart's content. He decided very early that she was not going to do that to him, and that he would wait until he actually was Hokage before using that little trick of his. Tsunade might hate his guts for a little while for not sharing that little tidbit with her, but Naruto knew her far too well to believe that she would use it herself instead of making him do it all. Naruto brought himself back to the task at hand, asking playfully, "So, is the old bat in?" Shizen mock glared at him for the way he addressed her mentor, as she responded with mock anger, "Yes, she is. Let me see if the Lady Hokage is available." She rolled her eyes as she rose from her desk to knock on Tsunade's door. Naruto gave a low chuckle as she walked by. Shizen knocked on Tsunade's door, and upon being prompted, she opened the door, announcing to Tsunade that Naruto was there. After a few seconds, Shizen closed the door. Turning to Naruto, her mock glare and mock angry tone back in full force, but this time with a seemingly playful smirk as well, she said to him, "The old bat will see you now." Naruto smirked right back at her. He thanked her and then approached the door of Tsunade's office, grabbing the handle and pulling it open. He entered and made his presence known. "Good afternoon, Lady Hokage." Tsunade raised an eyebrow and narrowed her eyes at him, asking suspiciously, "You're a shadow clone, aren't you?" Naruto began to sweat a little as he responded, How did you know?" "You didn't make any jabs at my age, or make any comments that might cause me to attack you. I would therefore draw the conclusion that you don't want me to do anything that would cause you to dispel." Naruto sighed in resignation. "Okay, you got me. I'm a clone." Tsunade gave a satisfied smirk, as though she just pulled one over on Naruto, even if only in her own mind, before continuing, "Now that that's settled, why exactly are you here on Naruto's day off?" Naruto adopted an all-business posture before answering this question, for 2 reasons. 1. To inform you of a couple of projects I've taken up, and a few ninjutsu apprentice that I've recently taken on, and 2. To commission an extended A-rank mission for Kurenai Yuhi's services. If she had been satisfied before at having gotten 1 over on Naruto, she was now floored and feeling as though Naruto had just gotten 5 over on her. Schooling her features as best she could, she posed the question, "Why exactly are you commissioning an A-rank mission as a client? And why Kurenai specifically?" Naruto answered her in his all-business tone, "That will be made clear as I tell you about the other reason I'm here." Naruto then proceeded to tell her of his training and work with Kurenai over the past week. The day following Kurenai's encounter with Naruto in Konoha Cemetery, Kurenai was at the cast iron gate that allowed entry into the Namake's estate at 8 a.m. sharp, just as they had arranged so that they could have some breakfast and begin training. As soon as she walked up, the gate opened itself, revealing Naruto in front of her. "Good morning," he greeted her cheerfully. "Good morning," she greeted in response with a smile of her own as she entered the estate. Naruto led her to the house so that they could have breakfast. He led her to the dining room where he served her a typical shinobi breakfast of rice, fish and roasted pork, with water, fruit juice and green tea. Having already assembled his own plate, he took the place next to her, and both of them began eating. As they ate, Naruto began his lessons to Kurenai so as to make the best use of time. "Okay," he began, his voice taking on a rather Iruka-like character as he entered teacher mode. "While we get ready for today's training, I want to go a little more into chakra theory and application as far as it applies to how I'm going to train you." With a frown of concentration on her face indicating that she was paying close attention to what he was saying, she nodded in understanding as he continued, "You already have a very good grasp on what chakra is, and how it can be universally applied, honed and fine-tuned, so we'll skip all that. What I do want to cover, though, is the importance of training chakra reserves and control through as many methods as possible, and in all of the ninja arts we use, not just the arts that we specialize in. Kurenai nodded again, her frown deepening as she remembered her mistake in only focusing on genjutsu. Naruto seemed to catch this, however, and began to reassure her, "You're not the first person to make that mistake, and you're not the only one in the village who is, right now. Kakashi, for example, tends to focus too much on chakra control for ninjutsu training only, and has very little if any chakra control training aimed at genjutsu or taijutsu. Guy tends to concentrate on taijutsu, to an even greater degree than Kakashi focuses on his ninjutsu chakra training, leading him to have very little control over ninjutsu and genjutsu except for that god-awful Sunset Cliffs genjutsu." Naruto added the last bit with a subdued voice and a shudder, causing Kurenai to giggle softly. Naruto smiled as he continued, "One thing you'll notice about Grandma Tsunade is that she focuses her chakra control in two specific disciplines, medical ninjutsu and taijutsu, which is the main reason why her control is as fine-tuned as it is, though I think her Senju blood probably has something to do with that as well, as her control over her naturally higher reserves is something of a talent she possesses. Sakura, for example, has naturally perfect chakra control, but her reserves have always been rather low. She can control her chakra better than Tsunade can, but she can't do anywhere near as many jutsu, and certainly not to the degree of power that Tsunade can, without running out of chakra rather quickly. The Hyuga clan are another example of refined chakra control concentrated only on taijutsu, control made better as they individually train their Byakugan. So, as you can see, more shinobi than not tend to make the mistake of not diversifying the areas and methods in which they control their chakra pools, essentially lopsiding themselves and creating ceilings that they can't seem to get past, without actually discovering why. Of course, I only realized this as you were telling me about your problem yesterday, and I found myself thinking about what I knew about other great shinobi that I knew. Back on topic though, we're taught that chakra is divided into two parts, physical and spiritual. Physical is linked to the body, spiritual is linked to the mind and soul. Kurenai nodded once more, showing Naruto that he hadn't lost her. Naruto continued, "This paradigm is oversimplified to the point where it gives an inaccurate understanding that doesn't hold water when applying more advanced methods of chakra training. It's true that these are the two sources that a person draws from when molding chakra, but..." Naruto paused for a moment to once again make sure that he had Kurenai's undivided attention. Kurenai, sensing the importance of what he was about to say, nodded for him to continue, making sure to note what he said. Naruto continued, "Upon seeing this, there is a lot more to advanced chakra training than simply molding physical and spiritual energies into the appropriate quantities, as I shall now list the concepts that I've observed are important. 1. The speed and volume at which we can make our chakra flow through our chakra networks. 2. The tenketsu points and how our chakra can flow through them, or be released through them to create different effects. 3. The innate feel of our own chakra signatures, and how they feel different from other chakra signatures. 4. And this one is primarily geared towards ninjutsu, but it can be applied to the other ninja arts as well. The nature and shape of the chakra that we wish to mold after we've mixed the two base energies together in the appropriate quantities, and the different effects that this has, both in how the shape and nature of the chakra behave, and in how effective they are when performing specific jutsu. These are the things I've managed to observe so far, but I'm sure that's only the tip of the iceberg." Kurenai just sat there in rapt attention, fascinated by his exposition on chakra theory. Seeing that he was done for now, she decided to venture a question: "How exactly did you discover all of this?" Naruto smiled, pleased at her interest in learning more about this subject, as he answered, "Well, a lot of it was just from instances where I can remember people explaining certain jutsu to me. Remember when Niji and I fought in our first Chunin exam finals?" Kurenai nodded in response, recalling the event. Naruto continued, "Well, during the course of that fight, he explained to me how his 8 trigrams rotation technique worked. He basically releases equal amounts of chakra through all 361 of his tenketsu points simultaneously. Only the Byakugan allows for the degree of concentration required to be able to do this. The degree of chakra control that Niji possesses that's geared towards the gentle fist is probably on par with the chakra control that you have towards genjutsu, and yet Niji has no genjutsu to really speak of in his arsenal, another example of lopsided chakra control. Another case in point, Kakashi. His chakra control over ninjutsu is almost unparalleled in the ninja world, and it's probably outstripped only by mine. Again, going back specifically to changes in chakra shape and changes in chakra nature, these are the building blocks to all advanced and specialized ninjutsu. Even if he can't do them all himself, Kakashi knows how to train all of the basic changes in chakra nature: fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind. It was Kakashi who trained me in wind chakra manipulation, even though I've never seen the man use a single wind-style jutsu." Greater and greater levels of understanding flashed in Kurenai's eyes as she continued to listen to Naruto's lecture. Thinking about it now, in light of what Naruto had just said to her, she could think of countless numbers of examples where these ideas proved themselves true. Naruto noticed her understanding, and the excitement that her newfound understanding seemed to bring her. He began to feel rather satisfied with himself, both with his knowledge of this subject, and with his teaching style. Naruto, wanting to make sure that she understood, asked her, "So do you have any more questions about what we've just gone over?" She shook her head in the negative. "Actually, no. I think you covered it pretty well." "Good," said Naruto with a smile before continuing, "but now, knowing all of this, let's talk some about how we'll start applying it all." Kurenai nodded with a smile and an excited gleam in her eye, her interest having been awakened by Naruto. Fascinated by just how technical the more advanced theories of chakra training were, she couldn't wait to apply it all and see just how all of it worked. Of course, now that she'd had a chance to rest and reflect on everything that happened yesterday, she was able to conduct herself and present her emotions in a more subdued and less ostentatious way, like she was more inclined to do. Since she had woken up this morning and thought about it, she was rather surprised at herself that she had acted in such an out-of-character way yesterday. She could only attribute it to all of the surprises that she had been presented with, on a day where she would be more emotional than usual. Thoughts of Asuma came back to her as she reflected on yesterday's events, but surprisingly, they didn't affect her as strongly as she thought they would, nor did they cause her to feel sadness or grief. This both confused and scared her a little bit, but she decided to set this aside for now and ponder it later. She brought herself back to the present, with Naruto being none the wiser as to her momentary lapse into nostalgia. After the two of them had finally finished breakfast, Naruto cleaned up the places before he continued his explanation once more. "Now, after giving this a little more thought, I've made a few changes to our training schedule. We're going to start by training your body and your taijutsu. While we're doing this, we're not only going to make your body stronger, quicker and faster, we're also going to be adding chakra in different ways to increase speed, power, and even precision. We'll focus on that for now so as not to spread you too thin and to avoid doing too much at once. I'll also begin your Fuinjutsu education today after lunch. For now though, if you would please follow me," he finished as he stood up and began to walk towards the back door. Kurenai got up and followed him as he opened the door, both of them stepping out into the rear grounds towards the training dojo. Kurenai was astounded when she walked inside the dojo. There were seals of many different patterns and shapes along the walls and ceiling, all of them glowing, indicating that they were currently active. She could only guess as to what their functions were, so she continued to look around. All around the room were wooden training dummies, posts and targets, as well as various different accessories all around the room, high-quality chakra weight devices, bracelets, ankle braces, and even belts to add weight to a person's center of gravity, kettlebells of various degrees of weight, chakra-enhanced wrist grips in order to enhance grip and grappling strength, as well as pull-up bars, floor mats, weighted balls and other devices for core and abdominal training, and even ropes that hung from the ceiling. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at this. Naruto, noticing her confusion, looked at where she was staring, and began to explain, "These ropes are frictionless. They're used to enhance chakra control while enhancing muscular control and strength at the same time. Come here, I'll show you," and with that, he gestured to her to follow him and take a closer look at the ropes. When she did, she was close enough to see what appeared to be tiny seals etched into the fibers of the rope. Naruto pointed them out to her and explained them. "You see two different patterns here. This first array," he pointed to one of the patterns on the rope, "helps to preserve the integrity of the fibers of the rope, because the seals themselves would flay as the fibers of the rope do. They stop that from happening. This array, here," he pointed to another pattern, "is what takes friction away from the rope. See?" He finished as he rubbed his hand up and down the surface of the rope, no sound being made, and no traction on his hand, demonstrating the effectiveness of the seal. Kurenai tested it herself, raising her eyebrows as her hand ran smoothly across the surface of the rope, almost as though there was nothing in her hand. Naruto brought her attention back to himself. "You'll learn to make seal arrays like these later, but you'll be using these ropes as part of your physical training. I'll demonstrate them later. Now come on, I want to assess your physical capabilities," he finished, gesturing for her to once again follow him, while he went to one corner of the room and grabbed some gear that looked to be a different color and shape than the rest of the gear in there. Kurenai followed on his heels while he did this, stopping when he stopped. After Naruto had collected the gear he needed, they turned around and asked her to put the gear on, a pair of bracelets, a pair of anklets, and what seemed to be some kind of padded loose-fit halter top that she could easily slip on and off. Naruto explained that the purpose of these devices was to indicate the optimal level of weight someone should wear when training their body in order to both maximize the effectiveness of the workout yet keep them free from injury at the same time. He instructed her to channel a steady stream of chakra into the devices. She did so, noticing that they were all getting heavier. She continued channeling her chakra into them until she began to feel somewhat strained, when the weights stopped getting heavier. Naruto told her to stop channeling chakra and he proceeded to take the weights off of her, looking on the inside surface of each. Kurenai looked at what Naruto was looking at, seeing that there were some numbers written on the inside of each piece of gear. Naruto informed her that the numbers were the ideal amounts of weight that she should wear on each appendage while performing physical training. Her ideal weights were reading as 45 pounds on her left wrist, 55 pounds on her right wrist, 80 pounds on her left ankle and 85 pounds on her right ankle. He had also informed her that she would start with the lower number on both wrists and both ankles, so that they could even themselves out, thus giving her body perfect balance. The halter top read 225 pounds, meaning that she would wear 225 pounds over her shoulders, chest and back while training her body in taijutsu. Kurenai had asked about the belts, seeing that there wasn't a belt that did what these other pieces of equipment did. Naruto told her that the belts would serve the same purpose as the halter top, and that they could be worn while performing pull-ups so that the weight could be a little lower on the body, making the exercise more effective. After recording these numbers, he pulled what looked like a pair of forearm-length gloves, and a pair of what would have been shin guards, except they were made of some kind of cloth instead of metal. Kurenai inserted her hand into each glove, and noticed that the portion that covered the forearm was open, and designed to be fastened around her forearms. She fastened, and repeated the process with the cloth shin guards, fastening them around the back. Before she could put the halter top on, Naruto stopped her before bringing her into what appeared to be a changing room, with female-oriented training clothes. Naruto had told her, rather bluntly, to Kurenai's mild annoyance, that the bandage dress that she was currently in was not suitable for the training that she was about to undergo. Letting her know that the clothes were laced with seals that could either tighten or expand the fabric on the outfits to a degree, and showing her how to activate them, he left her in the room so she could change. When she came out wearing a red training gi that was just loose enough to allow her ease of movement, but tight enough to stay on her body. Over the gi was the halter top, and under the sleeves and legs of the gi were the greaves and the gauntlets, all set at the weights Naruto set them at. Naruto wore a satisfied smirk, while Kurenai wore an annoyed scowl. Naruto told her that she would thank him for this later, then proceeded to grab a pair of hand grippers that was of the same basic design as the gear that determined her initial weights were. Naruto handed them to her, and told her to grip them as tightly as she could. She did, and found it quite easy to grip them, before Naruto told her to add a steady flow of chakra to them while maintaining the grip. She did this, and the resistance steadily grew for a few seconds on each gripper. The gripper in her left hand stopped increasing in resistance before the one in her right hand did, indicating that her right grip was stronger than her left. She could apply 70 pounds of torque in her left hand, and 85 pounds of torque in her right. Naruto seemed to be quite impressed with this. Kurenai had a rather strong grip for a genjutsu specialist. Naruto told her that for exercises that were done one limb at a time, she would do 10% more repetitions for her weaker limb than for her stronger one, so that she could balance them out as she grew in strength and speed. From that point for the next 4 hours, Naruto would have Kurenai on physical training, with 45 pounds on each wrist, 80 pounds on each ankle, and 225 pounds over her chest, shoulders and back. Naruto actually put some training gear and weights of his own on so that he could perform his routine while she performed her own. He told her his own numbers to give her an idea of what she'd be working towards: 400 pounds on each wrist, 750 pounds on each ankle, and 2,500 pounds over the top of his body. Of course, Naruto had to do this using resistance and gravity seals, so that he wouldn't create craters in the ground as he was moving. He did have over 2 tons of weight dispersed throughout his body, after all. Her routine was 300 standard push-ups, 200 handstand push-ups, 200 fingertip push-ups, 200 laps around the borders of the Namikaze estate, including running over the lake using her chakra point, 400 sit-ups, 200 pull-ups, 800 squats, 100 one-arm pull-ups with her right arm, 110 one-arm pull-ups with her left arm, 400 one-legged squats with her right leg, 440 one-legged squats with her left leg, 100 one-arm fingertip push-ups with her right arm, 110 one-arm fingertip push-ups with her left arm. His routine was 1,000 standard push-ups, 800 handstand push-ups, 800 laps around the borders of the Namikaze estate, including running over the lake using his chakra point, 2,000 sit-ups, 1,000 pull-ups, 2,500 squats, 500 one-arm pull-ups with each arm, 1,000 one-legged squats with each leg, 500 one-arm fingertip push-ups with each arm. After 3 hours, Kurenai finished with her routine, as compared to Naruto's 2.5 hours, and also left her breathing a lot heavier than him. Naruto told her, to her horror and extreme consternation, that they were not yet done. Seeing her getting steadily more angry, he reminded her that she was doing this to round herself out and ultimately overcome her own chakra ceiling. Bearing this in mind, though that didn't stop her from grumbling under her breath, she followed Naruto back into the dojo, where they began to use the training dummies and posts to perform taijutsu-related exercises. Kurenai's taijutsu routine, which she repeated 10 times, was 200 punches with her right hand, 220 punches with her left hand, 200 kicks with her right leg, 220 kicks with her left leg. Naruto's taijutsu routine, which he repeated 15 times, was 600 punches with each hand, 600 kicks with each leg. Both finished these routines at about the same time before cooling down with some stretching. Kurenai, still angry with Naruto, decided to give him a piece of her mind. She was a sight to see, panting hard, face flushed with exertion, hair disheveled and sticking to her forehead, sweat pouring down her face and drenching her GI, glaring at him while pointing in his direction, pausing between each word spoken through clenched teeth, gasping between each word, "You are evil." Naruto tried very hard not to laugh at this. He couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for the woman, who certainly wasn't used to this level of physical exertion, at least not with the amounts of weight that she was currently wearing, but at the same time, the trainer in him found this to be highly amusing. He settled for an amused smirk before telling her that she could take the weights off now, and also to go ahead and use one of the baths in the onsen inside the house to relax and clean herself up. She took off her gear and put it all away before leaving in a huff for the changing room to gather the clothes she came in and leave for the onsen. Naruto himself, not having worked up much of a sweat, decided to start on lunch for the pair while Kurenai was allowing the tension and soreness that was starting to come on to be relieved at least somewhat by the hot, mineral-induced water in Naruto's private springs. Naruto couldn't help but think with some amusement, "I wonder how she'll react when we start adding harder exercises into the routine," as he prepared lunch over the kitchen counter. Lunch was a stir-fry of chicken and mixed vegetables over rice, making sure that there was an overly generous portion of chicken so that the extra protein would allow for faster muscle recovery. He had also prepared 3 gallons of ice-cold water for them to drink. He was certain that Kurenai would go through at least 2 gallons by herself. Once Naruto was finished, he noticed that Kurenai was walking, or rather, stumbling in, eyes glazed over and mouth watering. She had evidently smelled lunch, and was ready for some. Naruto smiled at her as he asked, "Feeling better?" Kurenai scowled at him once more as she sat down at the dining room table, but this time there was a mildly playful quality to it. She couldn't stay mad at him. After all, he had done more reps and sets than she had in every exercise, far more, and he had literally 10 times the weight on his body to boot. That was also what made it more infuriating to her, the fact that he didn't make her do anything that he didn't do himself. She was infuriated by the fact that he left her with no room to point fingers at anyone except herself. And taking ownership for your own deficiencies could be a real drag. "Great, Naruto's turning me into a Nara," Kurenai thought to herself, both in amusement and annoyance. Naruto interrupted her musings by laying a plate of the dish that had her mouth watering, and invited her to dig in. He also brought the water to the table with a couple of glasses, and true to Naruto's suspicion, Kurenai downed several glasses of water, equating to about 3/4 of a gallon, before even touching her food. She didn't waste time eating either, but she did notice, with some frustration, that she had a harder time gripping her chopsticks than usual. Her forearms were tired and sore. Naruto, seeing her frustration, asked with a chuckle while pointing to her chopsticks, "Would you like me to help you, there?" Kurenai's face turned red at the question, but whether from a blush or continued annoyance, Naruto couldn't tell. She simply chose not to answer the question as she continued trying to feed herself, experiencing some success, but not enough to sate her grumbling stomach. After a few minutes of this, she sighed in resignation. She turned to Naruto and asked somewhat sheepishly, "Is that offer for help still on the table?" Naruto simply smiled and nodded at her, not wanting to embarrass her any further. He began to take portions of food that she could comfortably chew and feed her so that she could finish her lunch a little faster without completely abandoning her table manners. The mood began to lighten up as they made small talk over lunch, laughing and smiling with each other. After lunch was finished, Naruto informed Kurenai that it was time to get back to business. He led her into the workshop area in his library. He had set up a small workstation for her so that she could practice the basic fuinjutsu skills that he would be teaching her. She saw several scrolls, blank pieces of paper, and ink wells and brushes of various kinds. She took a seat at the place that he had set up for her as he went to one of his blank whiteboards and began lecturing. "Okay, Kurenai, before we get started, I want to tell you up front, as hard of a taskmaster as you thought me to be with physical training, I am a much harder taskmaster and a stingy perfectionist when it comes to sealing. If you're going to be apprenticed by me in the art of fuinjutsu, there are some ground rules you'll need to agree to first." Kurenai nodded in understanding. Being a master herself in the art of genjutsu, she would also set certain stipulations upon anyone wanting to apprentice under her to learn her art. She certainly didn't expect Naruto to be any different. Acknowledging her assent, Naruto began to list the ground rules that she would have to abide by while under his wing. First and foremost, unless for the purposes of study, you will never buy another sealing note, tag, or what have you from any store, or any other seal master ever again. This means you won't buy any more paper bombs or the like from the wolf's claw. If you need an exploding tag, or any other seal, you will learn to create your own. Kurenai raised an eyebrow in curiosity at this, but nodded in agreement, knowing that as with any art worth learning, understanding the reasons behind the rules would come in time. As an apprentice to Naruto, she decided that she would display the same humility that she would expect from an apprentice of her own. She simply kept her mouth shut and listened. Second, we will not move past a lesson until you have both completed the lesson and mastered the accompanying skills to my satisfaction, even if the lesson seems too mundane, or even if you've used the skills in the lesson before. Third, I have no problem with you asking questions. Ask as many as you want. The more you ask, the more you'll learn, after all. If an answer does not make sense to you, or if it seemingly contradicts what you believe you know about sealing, please don't argue with me. I'm happy to clear up any misconceptions or misunderstandings that you might have, but as a master, I will not argue with an apprentice who has nowhere near the level of knowledge and skill that I possess in this art. Do you have a problem with any of these ground rules? Not at all, responded Kurenai as she shook her head. I would expect similar behavior from anyone apprenticing under me in Genjutsu. Well, good then. Naruto replied with some enthusiasm. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started, shall we? Naruto went on to explain to Kurenai exactly what Fuinjutsu was, as well as give her some of the fundamental ideas and terms that most modern-day Fuinjutsu experts used. He would have said Fuinjutsu masters as well, but at present, there was one known living Fuinjutsu master in all of the elemental nations, and his name happened to be Naruto Namikaze. By the time he was finished with his lecture on basic Fuinjutsu, 1, he started Kurenai on some basic calligraphy and seal drawing exercises. She began to object at first before Naruto reminded her of the ground rules, at which she promptly complied without further complaint. Of course, after comparing her seal drawing to Naruto's own, she could see where he had adequate cause for making her perform this exercise. This is how it went for the rest of the week: 4 hours of physical training and taijutsu, followed by lunch, followed by 4 more hours of seal drawing practice until Naruto was satisfied. Kurenai found that Naruto wasn't kidding when he had said that he was a stingy perfectionist when it came to sealing. He criticized her work up and down, sometimes to the point of almost making her lose her cool, but the one saving grace she found about him was that not only did he point out her flaws, he took the time to offer help and advice on how to correct them. He also mentioned that with each day, the more she applied his advice, the better her seal painting skills became, although they were still not to Naruto's standard, which she would continue to find annoying. But as an apprentice to her master, she kept her peace and continued the painstaking work of perfecting her seal writing and painting technique. Around day 4, Kurenai was also starting to add chakra into her muscles as she performed her exercises, and into the points of her hands and feet that made contact when she threw punches and kicks. In addition to the exercises getting easier, she did notice that her chakra reserves were getting noticeably larger, and her chakra control was getting better at the same time. She was finally starting to overcome her plateau. Naruto also helped Kurenai to blend several different taijutsu moves into a style that would work to her strengths: fast blows and counterblows where she could add power when needed, but most of which involved quick movements, relying on her not staying still for too long. Most of the moves and attacks of her new style were circular in nature, as she seemed to prefer moving and attacking in arcs and curves as opposed to throwing strikes straight in. Naruto continued to help her build on this taijutsu style, actually finding himself excited about the time when they'd be adding ninjutsu or a weapon into this style of hers. At the end of the week, Naruto showed her his test plan for the Genjutsu countering project. After looking it over, Kurenai approved of what she had seen, seeing that it was thorough enough to run a sufficient number of trials, and probably get enough feedback from it to know what, if any, additional tests would need to be included. They would begin running their first clinical trials in 2 days' time. And the Genjutsu countering project is why I want to commission Kurenai's services. I want to make sure that she not only remains free to help me, but I want to continue training her as well, said Naruto, finishing his explanation to Tsunade. Well, so long as you can pay for the mission you're requesting, I have no objection. How long will you need her services for? Asked the blonde Hokage. 6 months minimum, maybe longer, depending on how this project goes. If I need more time, I can continue to pay for an extended A-rank mission at the rate you're currently charging. Tsunade's eyebrows shot up in shock at this. Brat, do you realize just how much an extended A-rank mission costs? You're talking the price of at least 6 S-rank missions due to the length of the mission alone. I realize that, Lady Hokage, and I can easily afford to pay that, added Naruto, very confident of the truth of his claim. Tsunade sighed in resignation, seeing that she was not going to talk him out of this. She began to put a mission profile together. Okay, Naruto. I'll fill out the paperwork with the mission details and I'll have Kurenai come up here to take the mission. Is there anything else? Naruto simply smiled. Nope, that's about it. Tsunade nodded before adding, I'll agree to this, because the money is needed by the village right now, but I have a condition. I want monthly progress reports from you on Kurenai's training, her apprenticeship under you, and the results of the Genjutsu countering project as they all stand by the end of that month. Naruto nodded to her, no problem, Grandma Tsunade. I'll give you regular updates on all three. With that, he dispelled himself before Tsuwanda could react, relaying the information back to Naruto. Naruto blinked as his clone relayed everything to him. Iruka saw him twitch and space out for a moment before coming back to himself. Shadow clone just a spell or something? He asked casually. Yeah, Naruto responded just as casually, although he was still shaking his head a little to try to sort through the sudden rush of information. Well, it looks like Grandma's allowing me to give Kurenai a mission so that I can keep her free for as long as I need her help, said Naruto, quite satisfied with Tsunade's approval of the request he sent his clone to make. Okay, Naruto. Well, I'm glad that things seem to really be coming along for you, said Iruka as he prepared to pay his bill and head back home to his wife. Sure thing, Iruka-sensei. I'm glad we could catch up, he responded as he paid his own bill, preparing to head back to his own home to do some training of his own. Both men said goodbye to each other and went their separate ways. And that's where we are now. Kurenai finished her recollection of the past week's events to Anko as they finished their meal. Anko, of course, couldn't help but continue to try to tease her friend some more. With a mischievous glint in her eye, and an equally mischievous smirk, she began to do just that. You know, you've spent probably more time at Naruto's house in the past week than anyone else has, well, ever. She looked dead at Kurenai in mock accusation. Kurenai blushed under Anko's scrutiny, beginning to sputter before collecting her faculties enough to spit out a defense. Now, wait a minute, it's nothing like that. I wouldn't be able to make a relationship with him work. He's just a little more than half my age. And I don't know him that well yet. Anko fell out of her chair in laughter at this, clutching her sides and rolling on the floor, completely uncaring towards the scene she was making in the dango pit. Kurenai continued sputtering as her face kept getting redder and redder, both with embarrassment and anger at her friend for pushing her buttons like that and backing her into a corner. She eventually stopped sputtering and just sat there fuming as Anko pulled herself off the floor and back into her chair in an attempt to get a grip over her laughter. Anko wiped a few tears from her eyes. You should see the look on your face right now. Kurenai continued fuming as Anko continued to try to contain her laughter. Anko then continued, her tone playful, but with a hint of seriousness, but I never said anything about you and my little bro being in a relationship with each other. I may have teased a little. She paused, and both her face and tone softened as she continued, but if I were you, I'd ask myself a few things. Why did you feel the need to defend yourself like that? Also, why do you feel the need to even tell me why a relationship with anyone wouldn't work? It would seem to me, and I'm talking as your friend, now, Kurenai, that you might very well be developing feelings for him. Kurenai had calmed down as Anko's tone had softened. As she listened, she became a bit forlorn. She voiced her concerns, her own resigned frustration evident in her tone. I don't know what I feel right now, Anko. Up until last week, I wasn't feeling much of anything at all, and now, here I am, with all these new feelings that I have no idea what to do with. On the one hand, what I said is true, but on the other, it's pretty easy to forget that he's 14 years my junior given his maturity. But I don't know, there's something about it all that just feels all wrong, she finished as her eyes began to well up. Anko dropped all pretenses of play and teasing as she frowned in concern for her friend. She paid their tab and quickly brought Kurenai out of the dango pit, teleporting the two of them to Kurenai's apartment. Kurenai looked at her friend in confusion. Anko answered the unspoken question, less chance of us being disturbed here. I don't think you'd want Iruka walking in on this kind of conversation, would you? Kurenai smiled in gratitude. No, I wouldn't. Well, come on in, she said as she pulled her keys out and unlocked her door. They entered her apartment and sat down on the love seat next to each other. Anko began anew, placing her hand on Kurenai's knee. Kurenai, why is this whole thing bothering you so much? Kurenai closed her eyes and sighed in an effort to calm herself before answering. Failing to calm herself, or to keep the tears from coming, she responded, to tell you the truth, Anko, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling, or why. Whenever I think about Naruto, one minute I feel like I've found the single greatest treasure I could ever imagine finding, and the next, I feel as though I'm betraying the man I loved, and everything we had. She began to sob at this, immense feelings of guilt threatening to overwhelm her. Anko pulled Kurenai into a comforting hug, Kurenai grabbing Anko tightly as she continued crying. Kurenai continued through her sobs, I never imagined myself in this kind of a situation. You're right, Anko, I am developing feelings for him, but he's so much younger than me. What will people think of me? Would something like this destroy all the respect I've worked so hard to earn? Will this hurt my career, Will it hurt his? What if I forget all about Asuma? There's just so much that's uncertain in this. More sobs continued to pour out of Kurenai as Anko simply rubbed her back in an effort to soothe her, and I'm scared. I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life, and I don't know what to do. She continued to sob in Anko's sisterly embrace, having said her piece. Anko just continued to soothe her and tried to calm her down. After a few minutes, Kurenai's sobs began to subside. Anko, sensing that Kurenai was calm enough to be able to process what she had to say, pulled out of the hug so she could look Kurenai in the eye. She began, Kurenai, I want you to think about this for a minute, and I want you to think hard, okay? Kurenai nodded, waiting for Anko to continue. She did. If Asuma could come back just to talk to you for 10 minutes, what do you think he'd say? Kurenai blinked a few times at this. She hadn't expected to be asked such a question, and she certainly wasn't prepared for it. She began to think about who Asuma was, and what he would want for her. Kurenai began to answer tentatively. I think that he would want me to be happy. I think that it would sadden him to see me this way. I think he'd want me to love again, and to pursue the dream we had of building a family with a man who would love me as much as he did. She smiled at this next thought. Actually, he would probably hope that I could find someone who'd love me even more than he did. He was always like that, she finished with a soft laugh as a few more tears began to roll down her cheeks. Anko smiled. I think that's exactly what he would say, and just because you won't necessarily grieve Asuma's passing anymore, that doesn't mean you've forgotten him, or that you ever will. You know as well as I do that you'll never forget Asuma Saratobi. But you do need to free yourself enough, if not to love, then at least to live. Kurenai, any man that you might eventually get involved with, whether it's Naruto or not, they're not going to replace Asuma. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can tell you that Naruto wouldn't want to replace him. Would you want to be Sakura or Hinata's replacement to him? Kurenai grimaced at his as she shook her head in response. Anko laughed at this as she continued, Kurenai, the point I'm making here is that there's nothing wrong with what you're beginning to feel for Naruto. And there's nothing wrong with being scared either. The situation is kind of unusual, but that doesn't mean that it can't become something amazing and wonderful. Believe me, as well as I know Naruto Namikaze, you could do a whole lot worse. And in my opinion, you'd be rather hard-pressed to do better. Kurenai smiled at Anko, feeling very reassured, and yet, thanks, Anko. I'm still a bit scared, but... Anko smiled and continued to reassure her friend. Kurenai, there's no pressure for you to do anything right now. If you're unsure about what you want to do, put off doing anything until you are sure. This, whatever it is you and Naruto have right now, either of you forced this at all, it just kind of fell into your laps. Let this take its course, at its own pace, and just enjoy the ride for now. If something more is meant to happen, well, life just has a way of making that clear, you know what I mean? Kurenai smiled and nodded, understanding exactly what she was saying. She hugged Anko, this time in gratitude. You're right, Anko. I don't have to do anything I'm not ready to do, Kurenai said, resolved that she at least knew she didn't have to make a decision one way or another right now. Anko broke the hug and stood up, preparing to leave. She gave Kurenai that playful grin that she knew all too well. Well, my work here is done. What are friends for, after all? Kurenai rolled her eyes and giggled at her friend's antics, showing her out. As she shut the door, she went back to the love seat, and continued reading Murder in the Hidden Mist from where she left off. Who knew what the future might hold? She certainly didn't, and neither did anyone else, but at least she was no longer scared of taking action in one direction or another. For now, she was content to just tag along for the ride, glad that for now she didn't have to do anything at all. Iruka Umino was in the middle of cooking dinner for his wife and himself. He was looking forward to talking with Anko after his earlier conversation with Naruto. Knowing that Anko had lunch with Kurenai while he was with Naruto, and suspecting that the reason Anko had not returned home yet was likely because she was still with Kurenai, he could hazard a guess that tonight's dinner conversation would be rather fascinating. As he prepared their typical evening meal of beef and chicken stir-fry, he began to reflect back on what Naruto had told him at Ichiraku's earlier that afternoon. He was both happy and hopeful for his best friend and adoptive little brother. He'd been through so much in his life, already, and it was about time that something with this kind of potential came along. Naruto's experience in life was about as far from normal as one could get, and there wasn't anyone who could really relate to him as he was now. He was far and away the most powerful ninja in the world. No enemy or threat could touch him, or even approach him. But still, Iruka saw the loneliness that came as a result of being a god among men the way Naruto was. He remembered his own loneliness from his academy days, just after his parents had been killed in the Kyuubi's attack. He remembered the mischief he used to cause, just so that people couldn't help but notice him. He remembered that he eventually got past the loneliness and found camaraderie in Mizuki, even if the camaraderie was supposedly falsified on Mizuki's part. The truth is that Iruka didn't buy that from Mizuki for a second, The man really had been his friend at one point, and both of them knew it. He remembered other comrades that had helped to end the loneliness as well, particularly when he worked under Kakashi Hatake in the ANBU. That was quite a wild ride, and he remembered their adventures in Kakashi's outfit very well. Then, of course, when old man Sarutobi had asked Iruka to teach at the academy, and more specifically, to teach 8-year-old Naruto Uzumaki at the academy, his life would forever change in ways he couldn't even begin to fathom. He remembered how cold he was to Naruto at first, being unable to see past the Kyuubi who had killed his parents and traumatized him as a boy. Some people treated Naruto as though he wasn't even there, which was painful enough for him. Iruka had to admit, more to himself than to anyone else, that he had done even worse than that at first. He had treated Naruto as though he was there, but that he wished that he wasn't. Iruka still remembered the day after Naruto had decided that he'd had enough with the cold glares and with having to work so hard to prove to people that, in Naruto's own words, he wasn't a nuisance, and he wasn't some kind of germ and that he had a name of his own. That name was Naruto Uzumaki. Looking back, Iruka couldn't ever remember feeling more guilty and ashamed of himself than when Naruto had said that to him. That was exactly how he had treated him, despite knowing that Naruto wasn't to blame for his loss. It was that night, for the first time, that Iruka really paid attention, and saw that look of loneliness in Naruto's eyes that he once saw when he used to look in the mirror. Iruka could see, however, that Naruto's loneliness was much more intense than his own ever was, and caused him much deeper pain. That was the night that Naruto had decided that he wouldn't attend his classes anymore. It was at this point where Iruka, in an effort to try to look more objectively at the boy that was his student, started to come by his house, seeing how he lived, and imagining the kinds of things he had to go through from day to day. His feelings of guilt and shame grew when he saw Naruto's living conditions. Naruto had nobody to teach him how to care for himself, or how to eat right, or how to survive from day to day, or even anyone to come home to after he'd had a particularly bad day to reassure him that everything would be okay. It was that same day that one of the boys in his class, what was his name, again, Hibachi? Yeah, that's right, he thought as he recalled the incident anyway. Hibachi had sent Naruto out on a wild goose chase as a joke in an effort to get him back for a prank that Naruto had pulled on him and his friends. The problem was that the joke was a very dangerous one. Iruka found himself getting angry about it even now. There had been some battles between Konoha ninja and ninja from some other village out in the back hills. Hibachi had said that if Naruto could get something from one of the corpses out there and bring it back, that Naruto could be friends with him and his buddies. Fortunately, Shikamaru and Chuji had heard the group telling this to Naruto, essentially preying on his loneliness just to get a laugh out of him, a laugh for them that had nearly cost Naruto his life. Iruka had gone into the area that Naruto had been sent into by Hibachi and crew, and when he had finally found Naruto, he couldn't convince him to come back, nor could he convince him of the danger that he was in by being in an area that was likely still a battlefield. He remembered when Naruto was injured and knocked unconscious as he was being pursued by 3 enemy kunoichi, and how he had brought him back to the village, and Iruka himself probably wouldn't have made it if Kakashi hadn't followed him out and covered his retreat. Naruto and Iruka became not only teacher and student, but friends and brothers in all but blood that day. Hibachi and his friends had been promptly expelled from the academy shortly after putting Naruto's life in danger so irresponsibly. Come to think of it, Iruka didn't ever recall seeing any of them again after that, even around the village. Oh well. Thinking about the relationship that he had forged with Naruto, and the way in which it continued to strengthen and deepen over the years, brought a smile to the scar-nosed Chunin's face, and a tear to his eye. Naruto's loneliness had never left him as long as Iruka had known him. The reasons for it changed, certainly, but it was still there. As the village pariah, he was lonely. As the village idiot, he was lonely. As the village hero, he's still lonely. Being a scapegoat, or being someone truly great, two extremes on both ends of the spectrum of normalcy. Both bring isolation. Naruto had nobody that could understand him, and besides a very select few, there were none that were willing to try, and then Kurenai seemed to come along in a chance encounter. Two people who, at first glance, had seemingly nothing in common, but if one were to look a little more closely, they would see that the things they did have in common, few though they were the things that truly mattered. Both knew deep loss and pain. Both know what it was to lose comrades, both to death and to differences in life. Most importantly though, both of them knew how it felt to be isolated and labeled, whether for good or ill. Kurenai Yuhi, whose physical beauty coupled with her skill in genjutsu made her stand out among the populace of the Hidden Leaf, as well as bringing a lot of attention of the unwanted variety from most of the male populace of Konoha. Even at 34 years of age, she was still the most desired woman in Konoha by men, and aside from the Hokage, the most admired and envied women in Konoha by women, both ninja and civilian alike. Possessing a beauty, poise and natural grace that had only improved with time, he hadn't appeared to age at all in the last 15 years or so that Iruka had known her, except if one were to look into her eyes, where they would see a maturity that reflected years of experience. It was this thought that made his thoughts turn to Naruto, whose eyes held a similar maturity to Kurenai's, a maturity that cost him quite a lot to attain. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, he added in his own mind. He'd never get used to that given the moniker Konoha's perfect storm, first on the battlefield, and then in bingo book pages in every shinobi nation, assigned a SS ranking in all of them. His father only received this rank in Iwa's bingo book. Named the perfect storm for his ability to unleash untold amount of destruction on untold number of people, using untold amounts of techniques at untold levels of skill. The word untold became annoying after a while, but this is what his bingo book page said. Naruto stood out and became the center of attention almost anywhere he went. Naruto himself was isolated first because of his burden, and later because he had become a god among men with power and ability so far beyond anyone that Iruka knew, that it became hard for most to see him as a man who was as human as anyone else, and had just as many frailties. Of course, it didn't help that Naruto had problems with unwanted attention himself. The irony about Naruto and Kurenai potentially finding each other wasn't lost on Iruka at all. Kurenai, trying to make herself seem less human than people thought her to be in order to earn the respect of her college and show her mettle as a kunoichi. Naruto, trying to show that he was more human than people thought him to be due to his exploits and accomplishments. Maybe the two of them could balance each other out, or something. Brought out of his reflections by the sound of his front door opening, he turned to see his wife, Enko Mitarashi Yumino, enter the house. "Hi, honey," she greeted him with a warm smile. "Hi, yourself," he greeted in response. "And how was your lunch with Kurenai?" "We had a great time catching up. And let me tell you, she had a lot to share." Iruka responded in a knowing tone. "I'm sure she did. I'll give you a wild guess as to who I ran into while you were with Kurenai." Enko didn't even need time to think about that one. "You ran into Naruto, didn't you?" Iruka nodded, and Naruto had a few interesting tidbits of his own to share. Enko raised an eyebrow at this. "Did he, now? So I'm guessing that you know of what happened on the 4th, and also what's been happening with them in the weeks since then." Iruka once again nodded. "Yeah, Naruto filled me in. I actually wanted to talk to you about some of the things that Naruto told me." Enko gave a knowing nod as she responded. "I wanted to talk to you as well. I think we should compare notes, and see what we have on them. If we're both on the same page, and I suspect we are, then we might be able to help them out some." Iruka smiled mischievously at his wife. "It's fun to meddle in family's business, isn't it?" Enko gave a closed-eye grin and nodded before changing the subject. "So, is dinner ready yet?" Iruka went wide-eyed, having forgotten to monitor what he was cooking. He ran back in to check it, and fortunately it hadn't started to burn. Seeing that it was done, he prepared 2 plates and brought them over to the table, noting that Enko had already sat down. Enko had already set up sake and water for them to enjoy while they ate. Iruka set the plates in their places on the dining room table and sat down at the place where he set his own plate. After they gave a quick blessing, they began to eat while sipping on their sake. Enko began their conversation as they ate. "So, Naruto and Kurenai, they've been in close proximity, haven't they?" Iruka responded. "Yeah. Naruto's beginning to develop very strong feelings for her. I don't even think he knows just how strong they are yet. Kurenai's got it just as bad." Iruka raised both eyebrows and smiled at this. His face became serious after a few moments. "Did Kurenai express any reservations to you about how she felt? Because Naruto has a few." Enko frowned at this as she responded. "Yeah, Kurenai expressed some of her own. I told her that she didn't have to do anything in one direction or another right now, and that she should feel free to take it as slow as she needs to." "That's what we told Naruto as well." Enko raised an eyebrow at this, tensing slightly. "Are we?" "Oh, me, and Tuchi and Aya Michiraku." Enko nodded in understanding and relaxed, knowing the confidence that Naruto and Iruka placed in the father-slash-daughter ramen duo. "So, what were Naruto's reservations about it?" "Well, he was worried about not being good enough for her. He mentioned the age gap, and about how he might not have anything to offer her that she would want in a partner. He's also worried about somehow hurting her inadvertently and driving her away because of his past experiences with women. He doesn't understand what Kurenai might see in him, or why." Enko nodded once again. "It's a good thing he has us to tell him, then." Kurenai's reservations were a bit different. The age gap is an issue for her as well, but it's because she's more worried about losing the respect that she's earned over the years if people were to start thinking of her as a cradle robber. She's worried about how it might affect her career, and she's also worried about how it might affect Naruto's chances at being Hokage. There's also another, more sensitive issue for her. She's afraid of forgetting Asuma, because the more she's around Naruto, the less she feels Asuma's absence. Iruka, all of these things frighten her. She wants to pursue him, I think, and honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'd love to see the two of them together, but she's so mixed up right now that I don't think she could have a healthy relationship with anyone until she works all of this out. Irika nodded in understanding. Yeah, and it's not like she doesn't have valid concerns, either. It could affect her career, or at least it could cause her to lose respect. You know how people in this village are, at times. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that Naruto won't care what people will think about his relationships. He knows whose opinions really matter and whose don't. And he'll be Hokage anyway, simply because he's the only one who can do the job that will. But then there is also the whole Asuma issue that she needs to move past. He paused and thought at this as it came to him. No, it's not that she needs to move past it, it's that she needs to want to move past it. Enko's eyes lit up in understanding. She knew right away that Irika was onto something. She voiced her thoughts on the matter. Yeah, that's exactly it, and as her thoughts trailed off, her eyes narrowed slightly as she continued. You know, even though we've told them to just let whatever happens happen, who's to say we can't maybe I dunno help them along a little?